I now call the April 23rd, 2020 Administrative Briefing and Work Session of the Marion County School Board to order at 9:00 a.m. Please silence your electronic devices to avoid disturbing others. I will now ask the School Board Attorney to explain the rules for this board meeting.
This work session is a public meeting as defined in Florida's Sunshine Law. The board is dedicated to full transparency in its meetings and its work. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board has adopted uniform meeting procedures, including the right for citizens to participate. The board will allow public comments regarding any work session item listed on today's agenda at the appropriate time. Speakers must fill out a request form and hand it to the school secretary. After the board and superintendent have completed their discussion on a particular agenda item, the secretary will call the speaker's name in the order received. At the podium, speakers are asked to state their full name and address and to spell their last name. Speakers have 3 minutes. As required by the Sunshine Law, the board must maintain orderly conduct and proper decorum throughout this meeting. Speakers may criticize subject matter and decisions in a respectful manner, but not people. Finally, speakers must be very careful not to violate the privacy rights of others, especially students and their family members, by mentioning their names or other identifying information. Thank you for your attention.
Again, good morning. We're going to begin our administrative work session, but prior to us having our superintendent's administrative briefing, I want to request from our superintendent 2 special board meetings, one for April 30th and one for May 5th. And then I'm also asking that our attorney will set us up with 2 attorney-client sessions. So I want to turn it over to our attorney.
The special sessions for COVID-19.
COVID-19 updates, yes.
Board members, on behalf of Chair Cummings, I am notifying you that advice is needed regarding 2 pending litigations styled Henry G. Farrow and Dr. Heidi Mayer versus Marion County Public Schools, and also Dr. Heidi Mayer versus Marion County Public Schools. Pursuant to Section 286.0118 Florida statute, known as the Government in the Sunshine Act, I am requesting 2 sessions with the board for the purposes of discussing settlement negotiations and strategy related to this matter. I will ask the board clerk to cause reasonable public notice of the time and date of these sessions and the names of the persons attending to be published. It is suggested that the first session be held following the April 30th, 2020 special board meeting scheduled for 9 a.m. It has also been suggested that the second session be held following the May 5th, 2020 special board meeting, also scheduled for 9 a.m. As required by this statute, only the following individuals will be present at both sessions: Eric Cummings, Chair; Nancy Thrower, Vice Chair; board members Kelly King, Beth McCall, Nancy Stacy; interim school board attorney Suzanne Green; and attorney Gary Adele. I will ask a court reporter to record both sessions, also as required by statute. Her notes will be fully transcribed and filed with the clerk of the school board. Upon conclusion of the litigation, the transcript will be made public record.
I recommend the board hold an attorney-client session pursuant to Section 286.0118 Florida statutes to discuss pending litigation. If there be no objection, I will instruct our attorney to schedule an attorney-client session to be held at Bice Cole Law Firm, 1333 Southeast 25th Loop, Suite 101, Ocala, Florida 34471, following the April 30th, 2020 special board meeting at approximately 9:30 a.m. in the morning. Attorney?
I read them both together.
You read both of them together? Okay.
So you can do
Okay, so, and then this other one. I recommend the board hold an attorney-client session pursuant to Section 286.0118 Florida statutes to discuss pending litigation. If there are no objections, I will instruct our attorney to schedule the attorney-client session to be held at Bice Cole Law Firm, Place 1333 Southeast 25th Loop, Suite 101, Ocala, Florida 34471, following the May 4th, 2020 special board meeting at approximately 9:30 a.m.
May 4th or May 5th?
May 5th.
May 5th. May 5th, I'm sorry. And I want to move this up in the meeting, guys, so that we can have full 7 days notice. All right. We'll begin the work session with our superintendent's administrative briefing.
Good morning and happy Thursday. We want to welcome Officer Elder. He's outside with us from OPD, Ocala Police Department. We were talking with him before the meeting, and he's from Iowa. And both Kevin and I said, wow, we've never really met anybody from Iowa. So we had great conversation with him, and we appreciate him being here. Also, we'd like to recognize, particularly today is a great day. Today's Shakespeare's birthday, and with that, it's World Book Night. So wherever you're at, whatever you're doing tonight, celebrate with a great book, and just enjoy the evening. Enjoy the evening. Today, I was honored to approve a donation from the McDonald's on Silver Springs Boulevard, and that will be on the next board meeting. They donated 1,000 packets of apple slices to our feeding program. So 1,000 packets of apple slices, and we thank them so much for that. We have a few updates, and we'll get right to that. And as Mr. Kelly makes his way in, okay, I've got his handouts. I'd also like to state to the board, you got the email yesterday about Camp Kiwanis, and that for this summer we have to cancel. I know this, in talking with Mr. Mitchell, this is the first time he can remember that it's been canceled. And talking with Mr. Nicklin from the Kiwanis Club, this is the first time he also can recall that it was canceled, and we're all very sad about that, but know that for this summer it is in the best interest of our kids. So as the Kiwanians move forward with plans, we'll keep you updated on that. Hi, Mr. Kelly.
Good morning, Dr. Mary. Good morning, board. Hope everybody is doing well. I think we've all heard about the stimulus package from the government of over $2 trillion, but within that package, there was something called the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, which gave dollars to colleges and universities throughout our nation. Actually, tens of thousands of colleges, from Harvard down to, I shouldn't say down to, equal to Marion Technical College. That fund had us designated to receive $541,724. Pretty significant amount of money. When we received the letter from Secretary DeVos last week, it was a pretty brief letter that just said a few rules. 50% of it has to go to our students, and that it should go to our neediest students. And it said that pretty much the colleges had the leeway to deal that money out how they saw fit. Now, that's a strange statement coming from the government. So what happened from that day to today is that every day the rules have changed and more rules have been added to that. So we make decisions and we wake up the next morning and we do the same thing again based on what was given to us last night. So here's where I am today. We have applied for the money. We had to apply in two lumps. The first 50% for the students, they required us to do first, so we have applied for that. That brings us, $270,000 roughly, that is to go directly to our students. Like I said, at first we thought we had the leeway to help all of our students out. The last guidelines that we got, it is for Pell eligible students that have filled out FAFSAs. So that eliminated a lot of our students. Matter of fact, it got us down to what I think about 283 students out of the 700 plus students that we have, which is unfortunate. So what we have done at that point, I've had my team, my financial aid team and student services, to put together some options for us to look at of how we think that money should go out to our students. And that's what I've handed out to you. Option number one is the real simple one. It's take those 283 students and divide the money up equally and say everybody has an equal share, and that's roughly $957 there. Option two kind of follows along what Mr. Voss was trying to say, is look at our neediest students. And the easiest way for us to do that would be look at the FAFSA, because who gets Pell and who doesn't get Pell is based on, socioeconomics and salaries and, how much income. So that is one way for us to look at this and say the students who have Pell actually, are more needy students, so give them more of a share than the non-Pell students. So you can see that I have 165 Pell students and 118 non-Pell students. If you gave, a full share to one and a half a share to the other, that'd be roughly $1,200 and $600 to those two. The other way to look at this is how much time they really spend with us. I have part-time and full-time students. Our full-time students are there every day, all day long, and then we have part-time students that come in at night and are there, for about half of the time for the most part. So we could look at it that way of which ones are full and part-time. That really doesn't base anything. I guess you can reason with that method that our nighttime students, for the most part, have jobs that they work during the day and they are taking a class at night. So they are, most are employed. The daytime students, most are not employed because they're in school all day long. So there's three ways of looking at that. The money has not hit our bank account yet from the government, so still got a little bit of time for some input on this before we make a decision. Just so you know, we are giving money still out to our students. Today, Pell came in today, disbursement, so we're at school. We've scheduled people to come in one at a time today to hand them Pell checks so that they have money from their Pell grants. So I asked the board if you have any input that you would like, or superintendent, if any of you have a input, we don't have to do it right here, but I'm at school, give me a call. You all have my number, and you can give me some input on that of which direction.
What does your team recommend, your folks?
We have argued this point over and over and over. All three of them can be very easily defended. I kind of feel like the intent from the secretary was that we look at our most needy students, and without doing an application or somehow contacting every single student and trying to verify what their situation is, the Pell is the easiest way. The FAFSA that we already have, that has their income on it, that has their status on it.
Option 2.
That would be, yes, option 2.
Under normal conditions, I would tend to agree with that. However, with the way things are right now, Pell is only one way of determining
Right.
need. Family situations have changed drastically
Right.
in many respects. So I would be more inclined to want to consider a more global approach, because as you said, it would be awfully labor intensive and likely impossible to determine each individual's family's situation right now, and what their situation was 2 months ago could likely look very different than what it's looking like right
Because right now, all 283 students would possibly
Qualify for Pell.
be approved by Pell because
Right.
people just don't have money.
now, or jobs.
So on
kinda
option
think
number
equal.
3, do we have any idea how many of our part-time students are now unemployed because of this?
I
Do we
do
have any
not.
idea?
I do not.
Too.
Our teachers are very much in contact every day with them. That would be one thing to ask those questions. I do have a lot of feedback from my teachers of how our students are doing, and but I don't have it solid data of collected from every student now.
When I look at this, I look at this totality of all the circumstances that's going on, and I see people hurting, whether they were eligible for Pell or not. Everybody's hurting right now, and so I see the option 1 is the way of trying to make sure that everybody gets something. And
I have cited on every one of your comments and been on that side. And I always come back, Mr. Cummings, to the federal government. When they gave out stimulus package, they did not look at all of these factors. I mean, they did use $75,000 as an income, but, we're trying to get money out quick. It didn't matter if my mother who got it, who was, is retired and drawn Social Security, she got the same amount that I might have gotten. So
Right.
I kind of come back to that also. So
I think it puts us in a spot where we don't pick winners and losers. Everyone.
that is correct. And that's one thing I did not want to do.
Right now, we the people, all men are created equal. We all.
I hear you. So I think your input helps me.
And we've got some time, correct?
Well, they said it was going to be here this week, but, well, yeah, we'll see.
So do you need a decision from us?
I do not have to have, it is not required by a board to it. I, wanted you to know about it and wanted your input, and I have no problem with it. I can defend any of these three. And to me, the easiest one in explaining to people is pretty simple, option one. And you can see the figures there are not, hugely different to some.
Yeah, I'd be inclined, just not knowing what their situations are since COVID-19, I'd be inclined to
Okay.
look at option one as long as it's following the guidelines that
Right.
the grant or the stimulus money.
Correct.
I think I think everybody's needy right now that's out there, that's struggling to go to Marion Technical College, and they're not students that have a lot of money.
This is going to keep them happy right now. They don't know about this, but we are in a place right now where we have to bring students in to finish some programs. It's a hands-on school. You can't finish welding without welding, and we're to a point where we have some testing basically that is left. So real soon we're going to have to bring students in, and if we can, we'll do it in small groups in less than 10. And actually, by DOE's fact sheet that they put out, we're allowed to do that to bring people in and test. We haven't done that yet. We're kind of waiting to see how everything goes in your direction too, of when to bring students back in. But we're gonna have to do it, or else we're gonna be looking at reimbursing tuition and things to students who didn't get what they signed up for.
And then when you look at option one and you think about the stimulus that went out, a lot of college kids did not get stimulus money because they're still carried on their parents' taxes.
Right.
My daughter is one of those, so I know for sure that they didn't get the $1,200. So I think this kind of covers it. Everybody kind of helps them the most.
And just as a quick heads up too, the second part of this is for the institution. Right, so there's another $270,000 that is to come that we're applying for today. Right. I'll be getting the same statement to you, Dr. Mayor. And that can be used for possibly loss of revenue from our school, moving to an online, program, which we've had to buy some, between laptops and learning management systems. The secretary did say that in this half, she would like us to build a robust online learning environment, being able to upgrade Wi-Fi, and so we're certainly going to be able to do that. But it doesn't limit you from using that money also for students. It says you can still use that. So if some needs still come up with students, we can address that in the other 50% too. I have kind of designated, we have students that are on payment plans. Right, so we set that up internally for them to make payments that can't afford it right away. So one of the things that I'm looking at doing with this second half of the money is possibly paying off our payment plans, our student loans. So that would help our needy students who
Obviously didn't have the money
debt
up front to pay for it.
Right. So that's something I'd like to do in the second half.
Excellent.
All right.
Okay.
Any other comments, board?
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Keller.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Mr. Ayers is going to do a brief update on the calendar, the instructional calendar.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Master Chair, Madam Co-Chair, board members, Dr. Mayor, Elena Martinez-Lopez, Ms. Green. I'm here today to talk about the instructional calendar. Marion County Public Schools missed 4 instructional days in March due to the governor's extended spring break. Another 2 instructional days were missed in order to give planning times for teachers to gear up for distance learning. And then students started back on April 1st. Florida Statute 1011.6 states that the minimum term schools will operate was 180 actual teaching days, or the equivalent on an hourly basis. 180 days is equivalent to 900 instructional hours. Instruction is currently scheduled to end on May 28th. It is proposed that the last day of instruction be Monday, June 1st. That would be 176 instructional days, but would also be 924 instructional minutes. So we'll meet our instructional minutes by the time which meets statute. We've been in conversation with the union on a daily basis on things like this, but we wanted to get you up to speed on where we were planning to go and seek any input that you have on that.
Well, thank you for that clarification, because I think teachers or employees have been seeing a June 1st date and they're like, wait, what? So I think there's been some confusion. So by law, we have to do this. So thank you for communicating that so everyone's on the same page and there's not confusion and there's clarity. Thank you.
We still don't know if the commissioner is going to excuse the 4 days, even though when it was announced, he said extension of spring break, but we haven't heard anything formal
If
yet.
we do the June 1st date, we're covered, whether those days are forgiven or not. So we meet the instructional hours, which means for Teresa Elson-Ellis, we're fully funded FTE-wise too.
Okay. Thank you.
And then we'll get this before you. One thing was for board approval. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mayor.
And final updates from Mr. McAteer.
Morning.
Morning.
I am here to share some information and talk to you a little bit about graduations, which I know is a topic that's very, very hot in our community, as well as should be. One of the things that we've really been looking at as a district is balancing the public health concerns in an environment that changes every day. So what I tell you today, as you know, could change tomorrow or could change next week, but also with the opportunity to make sure that our seniors who have suffered so much are in terms of what they've missed compared to previous classes and probably future classes, and kind of giving them the recognition that they deserve. So it's a very challenging kind of tightrope, I guess you would say, and something that we've really put a lot of thought into and thinking about. I've been thinking about this for 5 to 6 weeks and working behind the scenes, talking to folks, working with folks. Our department was really focused on distance learning, but I spent most of my afternoon and evening looking at graduation because I knew this was coming. I just had a feeling. And we have, I've consulted all over the state. A couple board members have sent me information. I've consulted with you when you've talked to me. I mean, I've got every community member in the world that wants to help me, which is a great thing. That's a great thing, and it's a positive stamp on our community that they really care about these kids. I mean, so many folks have stepped up to say, these are different ideas. I mean, I've got ideas from Alaska, I've got ideas from overseas, I've got ideas from all over the place, and we really tried to balance them. So about 3 weeks ago, I asked our high school principals to consult with their senior student leaders and their other seniors if possible, but mainly their student senior leaders, because those are the folks that their class elected them to represent. But also I wanted them to talk to any other senior that they had an opportunity to, and many of them took the opportunity to talk to multiple seniors, and also with their parents. Talk to their SAC parents, but also talk to parents when they're coming in and picking up a Chromebook, or talk to parents when they're, and our principals, did that. And I asked them to get back with me. I didn't want them to make a huge deal about it. I wanted them to kind of talk to people and get their thoughts and get folks' thoughts. And overwhelmingly, everyone that they spoke to, minus one person, I don't know how many hundreds they spoke to, said that they wanted some sort of face-to-face ceremony, even if it was modified. So what we've done and what we've been challenged to is, and we looked at all different types of ceremonies, and we talked to all different districts, and we're doing the same things. Probably one district kind of is doing what we had floated to somebody else I found out yesterday, and hadn't spoke to them, just they kind of, their leadership kind of had the same brainstorm that we did. But we've looked at virtual, which means that students have no face-to-face contact, but it is an option. A couple of districts are doing it, but I know that one of the districts that is doing it is also now, because of their student leadership, is going to July to doing a senior celebration as well, which to me, I think you should probably just have graduation in July if you're going to do that, but that's a different story. We looked at drive-throughs. I've talked to the owner of the Ocala Drive-In, who has been very kind, and talked to him about different ideas. I know that folks at the mall have reached out to different folks in the community. I mean, we've had all different, I've had Chamber of Commerce, CEP folks reach out to me. So we've really had a lot of information to call through in a very short time. But overwhelmingly, even with modifications, the folks that we've spoken to that are the main stakeholders in this want face-to-face. So Again, I've spoken to all the high school principals about this numerous times. I mean, we've had multiple conversations. I talk to some of them 5 and 6 times a day. Dr. Mayer has spoken with law enforcement. I know she spoke with Sheriff Woods, who spoke with Chief Graham, and they kind of like this because when you see our plan, they're going to control access. So they're going to control kind of how we are able to manage the folks, which is what, in this kind of situation, if there is still public health, which we believe there will be, they need to do. They're the professionals, not us, and they need to be the ones that control that. But I know Dr. Mayer has had very good conversations with folks, and they want to be partners in this, which, again, I think is a testament to our community. They're willing to work with us, and they're going to control access. So we wanted to look at how our traditional graduation dates align. And quite honestly, looking at just kind of forecasting and looking throughout the state and looking throughout the nation, again, knowing that everything's unpredictable, our current graduation dates weren't going to work. I mean, I don't think anybody has kept their current graduation dates that's doing face-to-face. I know Hillsborough announced yesterday, July. Several other districts are doing similar to what I'm going to propose that we do. But I'm going to kind of walk you through what this graduation ceremony would look like. Keep in mind that this is in pencil, but it's just something that we kind of tried to balance public health with trying to give our seniors a face-to-face type of graduation, but knowing that there's some things that we're going to have to take out. There's some bells and whistles that we might have in a traditional graduation ceremony that, in the interest of public health, we probably can't have. Now, would my desire be that if when we had these graduations, that everything was great and we were able to do our normal graduations? Certainly. And if that is the case, then we certainly would adjust immediately to what we needed to do to make sure that this happened. But what we're looking at and what we're proposing is 8 graduations, including MTI, in 6 days, which would be, it's kind of similar to what we do now. It would be Monday through Saturday, and we would have to have rain days built in, which we've kind of gone through that a little bit. And we haven't assigned the schools because until I shared with you, there was no reason to go any further than that. But the schools know that after we have this conversation, if we're moving forward, that we'll sit down with the principals and talk to them as a group about what days would be best for their school community, what days would be best for those types of things. But we're proposing right now June 15th through the 20th. The reality is we have to have backup dates, and our backup dates would be July 13th through 19th. And, you know, I would love for us to be able to do this in June. It would be awesome. The reality says that July is probably more realistic. I mean,
Was that July 13th through what?
July 13th through 19th. It's Monday through Saturday, so if I got the dates wrong.
Sometimes the kids have gone out of
They,
town. And
they go in the
vacations
military.
and all
And
kinds of
I
stuff.
don't like the idea of postponing
like
it till July. And I know parents that also, they want it to be real time. Because I've also, heard some things. So I'll let you go ahead and finish before.
So again, and that's one of the things, the trade-offs that we're going to have is we are going to have folks that have enlisted in the military, and we are going to have folks. Now again, I think that most of those folks, because the colleges are going to be virtual learning, most of those folks necessarily wouldn't be away at college at this point during the summer, but certainly with some of our folks, we know that they're going to be moving about, which is, happens at regular graduations from
Share
time
the
to time.
plan, and then we'll all just pray it doesn't rain, because if it doesn't rain, we're good.
Okay. So where would we have these? We have to do open-air high school stadiums. The Livestock Pavilion has been a great partner of ours for a number of years, but the reality is it's too enclosed, and when you hear our plan in terms of social distancing, we wouldn't have enough space on the floor of the Livestock Pavilion either, which again opens us up to rain. As I said before, something's got to give here in terms of what we do, because I think that enclosed area and being able to map out spaces for folks would be the best place. So Vanguard High School would do theirs at Booster Stadium. MTI, we would choose whatever school they have the most feeders in. I'm thinking it's Lake Weir Forest for their seniors, and they would do it there. But the rest of our schools would just do it at their high school stadiums, which several of them do that anyway. Yeah.
Another question.
Sure.
This might sound a little crazy, but not to me. One school that we definitely must do a graduation for is Hillcrest.
Good. I'm glad you brought that up. I have spoke to Miss Manresa, and I asked Miss Manresa, and I had Mr. Whitehouse on the call as the area director, and she came up with the idea that me and Mr. Whitehouse already had. She does not want to have a graduation until September, October, emphatically. because her folks can't,
They can't be in that sun.
any plan that we have is not going to be conducive to their health. Plus, they must have I shouldn't say they, many of the students must have one-on-one care while they're there. Ms. Thrower knows better than anyone.
Right.
But yeah, I thank you for bringing that up. I had it at the end. But yes, Lori, we and Ben had talked, and we said, we're going to call Lori because her situation is a little different. And Lori said, this is what I want to do. And I said that.
The kids, though, she said she's sure that all.
Yeah, all her kids return. I mean, she's
the thing.
Okay. Yeah, that's,
she's got a captive audience.
age out
Most
at
of them.
22.
Right.
She said the ones that aged out would come back. She's not worried about that. She said one or two may move every 2 to 3 years, but she doesn't lose kids,
Okay.
so that way, the way that we
Thank
have, so those students stay.
Thank you.
So yes, thank you, but yes, we did have a conversation with Ms. Manresa. She came up with the idea. Thank goodness it was the idea that we thought was the best idea also. So I'm going to walk you a little bit through this, and I know that some of this will be painful in terms of what we're used to. And again, we can tweak some of this based on advice from different folks, but I wanted public health and things like that, but I just want to kind of walk you through some of this. So we would give every senior 2 tickets, okay? We would broadcast it live on the Marion Education channel and also YouTube. And then if public partners wanted to do extra things with big screens for folks that weren't there, they could certainly do that. Social distancing here is a key. We would have to open the gates at least a couple hours early to let folks in, because we're going to have to stagger them in. Law enforcement is going to help us with access. They're going to check tickets when they drive in the parking lot. If they don't have tickets, you turn around and go. So that would kind of be that. We need strong law enforcement presence to keep all non-ticket holders out. And I don't like to be that way, but unfortunately with some of our graduating classes, they have very large, and we're going to get into upwards of 1,200 folks there for Westport, just in the stands that we'll have to spread out. So, public address announcer would be reading social distancing reminder script repeatedly before the ceremony, because you're going to have to remind people over and over again, and in good conscience, we can't not do that. If you've ever been to a state playoff event at a high school for FHSA, it's kind of like the FHSA announcement that you hear over and over and over, and I can probably say it to you right now. It's kind of like Kevin Skylart's. I know the script by heart. I know the FHSA, and that's our goal, would be for them to have that by heart and be able to do that. The stadium would be marked with tape where appropriate seating is. So basically, you're not coming in with 8 or 10 people anymore. You're coming in with 2 people, 1 and 2, and we would it'd take a lot of work up with my department and the schools, but we would make sure throughout the stadium that we measured and spread out and put X's with blue tape is what I envision it, but it could be any way. I'm sure we can come up with better ways by the time we actually have to do it, but I just see blue tape with an X. Family sits here, we measure off, family sits here. The social distancing thing announcement would include that, please sit where the blue X's are. Again, it's a little easier when you're not bringing in 15 to 20 people. You're going to have some families that know each other that might want to sit together 6 feet apart, but it's not like at the livestock pavilion. You may have groups of 20 to 30 that are in there at a time in a section. So we want to make sure that we do that. We want to make sure that we have them at least 6 feet apart, and that we have law enforcement, heavy presence there, no standing on the fence lines or on the fields or anything like that. Again, we would have to have handicap seating on the track. That is going to have to happen no matter what, but I think that usually those would not be the 2 ticket holders in most cases. In a couple of cases they would, but we would make sure that we're ADA compliant. That's has to be done. So student seating. We would have all our student chairs 6 feet apart, hence why we need football stadiums, because you can't do that on the livestock pavilion, it's too small. And Westport and Forest would be a challenge, but we would still be able to do it because they have tracks. So we would have to spread that seating out a long way. The Val and Sal's would be up front, everything else would be alphabetical. And the seating would be 6 feet apart. Now, here's where I get to be the person that says things that are not traditional. I have a list of no's here that we would not have in the interest of public health. We would not have graduation practice. And again, these things could change if public health concerns change, but we would not have graduation practice. We would not have a processional. We would not have a recessional, and I'll explain to you what that looks like in a moment. We could play pomp and circumstance over the loudspeaker so people could hear it. We would not have a pre-graduation meeting in an enclosed space like we do at the livestock pavilion in the back. Most of you have come in there and marched with us before, or in the cafeteria at Dunellen, or in the Performing Arts Center at Westport, where we stick with adults, 800 people in that little space. We can't do that. We would not have a teacher section. Senior teachers would be allowed to attend to be marshals and help people get where they need to get, but we would not have our normal teacher section. We would not have our normal district personnel section. Unfortunately, those people are sitting too close together, and quite honestly, they take up space away from students if we're spacing people 6 feet. So this is one that, as a former principal of an arts magnet, kills me. We couldn't have band and chorus performances. They're too close together, and they can't sit 6 feet apart and have the sound that they need. I mean, we might have an individual singer come up and sing the national anthem because that would meet social distancing, but we couldn't do that. I mean, if things were relaxed, we could certainly look at different scenarios, but I'm doing this worst case scenario, what we could do, and that's not realistic for public health and making sure on these fields that we have enough space to be able to do that. And we would not have musical performances by duos or trios, because obviously they sit together. I hate to do that. I mean, I know we could film those. There's things we could do once we could get into the weeds a little more, but as far as having people sitting together right next to each other, playing an instrument for 4 minutes, singing a song, I don't think that's going to fly with the health department. I don't think it's responsible on our part either. So those are kind of my no's. I'm going to go through what it would look like for the students and what it would look like on stage and what the actual process would be. So when students arrive, their names will be on their chairs. So that'll be, besides the X's, we're going to be out all afternoon, probably in the sun or in the early morning in some places, putting kids' names on their chairs. So you'll have
Like alphabetical, so
yeah,
they can find
you'll have Val and Sal, then you'll have alphabetical. The rest of the way, we'll have lanyards up not lanyards, excuse me, placards is the word I was looking for, signs or something with A, B, C, D. We'll let them in 3 to 5 at a time, to maybe 5 to 7 at a time to find their seats. And knowing we'll have senior teachers there to be able to direct them. C's are over here, D's are over there. We'll label the rows to make sure we direct them and find their seats. And unfortunately, one of the byproducts that we have to have lots of water is we're going to have them sit immediately. I mean, we can't have, and this is where I feel like an ogre, but we can't have them and they haven't seen each other for a while. We can't have them in droves, so that's why we're going to have folks who are saying, listen, guys, and have constant reminders. I feel bad, but if in our current situation, we can't have that. You know, if they just chose with their parents' permission to do things after graduation, that's certainly something I don't have any control over. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's not my job to be able to do that. But I mean, on our campuses, during our graduations, that cannot happen. So they would sit immediately. So that's how they would find their seats. And we would give them like a cheat sheet beforehand to kind of let them know what they would do and send it out, email to them once we got everything finalized. This is what you do. I mean, it just takes out the graduation practice piece of it. It takes out that big gathering before you go out to the seats. So on stage will look a little different. You guys have all sat on stage with me at some point, and sometimes it feels like we're going to rock the stage because there's so many of us. It's about to go down to the ground. Quite honestly, we have to model, like you're doing, what we expect from our students and our parents. So on stage, there would be 3 chairs, 1 chair in each corner, 1 chair in the middle. The principal would sit in the middle, the board member would sit in the corner, and the superintendent would sit in the other corner. I would not be on stage. I was on stage at all 8 graduations last year, 7 traditional graduations last year, and 1 non-traditional. And I would not be on stage. The area director would not be on stage. The APs would not be on stage. They would be working, doing different things, but we have to have that stage with a lot smaller group than what we usually have. The only speakers would be the Val, the Sal, the valedictorian, the salutatorian, the superintendent, and the principal. So the speaking part would be very quick. And you ask, why would we need that to be so quick? Well, when you socially distance people in chairs at Forest and Westport and Vanguard, and they have to walk all the way from the back of the stadium across the stage, that part is going to take a little longer than what it usually does. So we're just trying to make sure that people, yes, ma'am?
Vanguard usually has 6 to 8 vowels.
They're going to have 28 to 30, but they only have 1 speak. So
Okay.
they've already got that in. I've already talked to Mr. Carlisle multiple times about Val and Sal, become valedictorians, because that's.
28?
I think they have more actually this year. 33 this year. 28, I think it was last year. 33. So we addressed that a long time ago, I think, previously, but he will have 1 speaker.
Okay.
So, but, in the past, we've had student government people speak. We've had all these different people come to the stage. In the interest of public health, we can't do that. Val, Sal, principal, and superintendent, and that needs to be it. And again, I'll take direction as we get farther into this later from schools about what they think that they need to do. So on the right of the stage, as a student's name is called, there'll be an AP with a microphone, just like at a traditional, 6 feet away, calling their names. They'll have an alphabetical list. Most of our schools already do this. Some of our schools have cards where they actually pass out the card with the name of the pronunciation. We can't do that. Can't be passing things back and forth. That can't happen. So we'll just have and I know Lake Weir does this already, and I think Bellevue, they just have an alphabetical list, hence why we have to sit straight alpha, so that we know who is there and we can just call the names. So to the right of the stage, you'll have an AP calling their names, just as usual. So the students will be called Val, Sal, alphabetically, and they walk across the stage. This is where it gets different. They walk across the stage. There's no touching. In the past, there's been hugging. I mean, I've hugged students I've hugged that I've known, shaking their hands, none of that, fist bumps, whatever, lots of that. And I hate that personal touch gets taken out of graduation, but I think that, in the interest of public health, that's not something that we're going to win. So what they would do is they would walk across the stage. You would wave to them, say hello, congratulations. They would walk off the stage, go down to the left. In the left, usually on the stage, there's a table. This table would be on the left. The table would have 4 to 5 diploma covers. You have boxes with all 300 or 400 underneath. We put 4 to 5. The AP would be with gloves, pushing 4 to 5 out at a time so kids don't touch all over them. Grab their diploma cover, walk over about 6 feet to the X in the grass, get their picture taken in their cap and gown with their diploma cover, and then walk back to their seat. Now, we can't line up folks when they go to do this, but a natural progression would say, if I know I'm going straight alpha, if I'm a senior marshal, I can go like this to kids and they'll start figuring it out after 3 or 4 kids to get in line. But we can't have a processional line where everybody's this close to each other and we're rushing through. So that's going to be a challenge, and it's something that we'll have to train our marshals and make sure that they do. Okay, so I mentioned that part. The students walk over, and then the student returns to the seat. There's no recessional. Nobody is turning tassels on stage. Dr. Mayer or the principal, however we design it, will say, now turn your tassel. Like some of the schools already do, but a few of the schools bring somebody on stage, can't have that. No recessional, no tassel turning on stage. Students throw hats in place. Don't go down to the end zone and get in a big scrum like they do when I was principal at Westport and Dunellen and throw them. I hate to take that away too. Throw them up. Principal comes up, say, you've been a very great class in terms of your overcoming adversity. The principals know what to say. You're now dismissed. And we would have to get people off the field. Unfortunately, we would not have to have all our pictures on the field like we always do. They could do that somewhere else. They would not be able to get pictures with all their favorite teachers. I get it. It's not fun. And that's where law enforcement would come in, helping us remove folks, reminding the public address announcer, please move. So, the stadium and the law enforcement would be clear. Stadium and a parking lot would be cleared by law enforcement. And they do a great job at that at graduations anyway. They're very well trained at moving large crowds. So that's kind of where we're at. I know there are other things that we could do, but again, I think that talking to our principals and having them talk to their stakeholders, this is a viable plan. Yes, ma'am.
What time of day are you thinking of doing this?
Well, we'd have to do 2 on a Friday morning and a Saturday morning, which we already do a Saturday morning twice, and one we do in the sun at Bellevue High, so that's no different. And then the rest of them, I would say, I'm going to say something, but I'm going to tell you from a former high school principal, and so hear my whole thing. 6 o'clock would be our time. Okay, hear me out. Because if it rains, it gives you 2 hours or 2.5 hours to overweight the rain. I can certainly do 7. We can do 7 is better in terms of the sun going down. I get that. But the issue is going to be that I can tell you that almost every year I've been a high school administrator, either a principal, AP, it's either rained or has been a threat of rain. Now, it's not usually quite as bad in July as it is in May and June, but it still rains. So, again, that's something that we could bring back to you. I'll talk to the high school principals and get their thoughts. But, no matter what we do, somebody's going to get hot.
And at North Marion, we had our graduation in the morning for years because it usually doesn't rain in the morning, and it's a little bit cooler typically. And there was 1 year only, and then the following year we moved to the livestock pavilion. But, obviously what the principals feel is best for their school is largely what we will want to follow, but it would only seem to make sense that knowing our weather patterns here, having people get up early and get it done.
My concern is we're going to be back to work. That might be my only concern is that we may be back to work at a lot larger scale in June,
But
July.
there's people that work in evenings too. There's waiters and servers and.
Right, and if you're only talking 2 people,
I'll run that by the high school.
I really think the morning time is better because of the heat and the rain. And if we're going to have it all week long, I think we just, this is unprecedented. I congratulate you and your staff for the forethought of putting this together. I would hate to see it July, but we may not have a choice.
If we do it in the mornings, we'll have a much better chance of it not happening.
Yeah, so
I feel comfortable with that. Again, I'll talk to the high school principals. To me, it's not, my only concern with that, I came up with those times because of work. That was,
See, we only have to get 2 people off.
Correct.
Each
That's a good
parent
point.
has to get 2 people off. We don't have
So
aunt, uncle, and everybody.
I really think if we're going to space it out all week long, I think we need to have those graduations, every graduation in the morning.
Okay, well, with that, unfortunately, we're going to have at least 2 in the evening. Maybe they're 2 of our smaller ones, but because we have 8 schools that we have to do.
I think we could do morning. We'll chat.
Okay.
We can do morning.
Okay.
Well, and I know the superintendent likes to be at every single one of them, but it may be in order to get the mornings in that we have to have the deputy or somebody else. I just think that we really need to think about that.
Okay. Again, that's why we brought it here. The more ideas that I can get, the better. I think I'll certainly run that by the high school principals. I know that most of them are listening today because they're on pins and needles wanting to know about graduation.
Especially since it's not going to be so drug out, because like normally when you go to a graduation, you got to wait for your kids because they're with all their friends, and so mom and dad are kind of hung up. It's not going to be that way. They can get right back to work fairly quickly.
Okay, a couple other things I wanted to talk to you about. I know that a couple of you had reached out to me about a parade. And there is a parade that is being organized for seniors, I believe, by community members to honor seniors. I will be the conduit between the parade committee and Marion County Public Schools, but it is not a Marion County Public Schools event. It is sponsored by community members, and I will help where I'm able to help in terms of communication. But I just wanted, I know that a couple of you had reached out to me and had questions about that. But that is not a Marion. Some folks, I think on social media, thought that maybe it was taking the place of graduation. We always intended to do our own graduation ceremony. They just want to do something nice for our kids. So, again, that's
As
something.
long as they don't conflict with the dates, with our primary date and our secondary date.
I don't think that'll be an issue. So, and then the last thing I kind of wanted to talk to you about is we are in a new normal, which I don't really like that term usually, but in this case it's true. We have seniors that want to need some happiness in their life, so our high school principals are chomping at the bit. Our elementary principals have already been out in neighborhoods doing a lot of creative things to see their kids, but we are going to have our high school principals starting in May passing out their cap and gowns. Actually, Herff Jones has been really good with gloves. They've been doing it all over the state already, so it's not new, to make sure that they get them. And then we're also going to make sure several of our principals have bought yard signs out of their internal funds for our seniors. So we really just, you'll see a lot of senior celebrations. I encourage you, when you're able, to take a look, take part. Kevin's going to publicize some of the things that we do. All of them are going to be with public health restrictions on them. So we're not going to have everybody and his brother. They're going to involve cars. So, but we have to be able to give our seniors their cap and gowns, and there's a lot and collect some books and different things that we do. So just wanted to let you know that's coming. So if you see it on social media, you're not unaware.
And that won't start till May 4th.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. 1st of May, May 4th, sorry. May 4th, Monday, May 4th. So we're set up for that. Yes, Mr. Rowe.
And amazing how much great thought has been put into this, and that's what I feel like I'm taking away from this conversation so far, is that the organization piece is going to be key, and the folks that are going to be attending need to know what the procedures are going to be well ahead of time if we're looking at trying to make this quick and keep the distancing and those kind of things. So it sounds like you've really thought about that. Are you going to speak to 8th grade graduation and 5th grade graduation as well?
Right now, we're bringing this to the board. 5th grade graduation will be Miss Beck. 8th grade graduation, I don't think is as widespread. We have a few of our schools that do it. I think that they're working on some very creative ideas with Miss Renfro, our middle school coordinator. I will get with her this afternoon. I've talked to Omar and a couple other folks about different things, but I haven't gone into very much specifics. I've been really hyper-focused on this, but I do not want to forget our 5th graders and 8th graders. But we have put a lot of thought into this. It takes a lot of time, and I think with 8th graders, I think really the only thing we're probably going to be able to do is some sort of drive-through or something like that, but I think for 8th grade students, that's what they want. They just want some
That was
contact.
mentioned when we met, our group met yesterday
Yes,
morning. There was one school that wanted to do a 5th grade, like a drive-through
Yeah.
celebration with the 5th grade teachers, distance, everybody distance, but have the family drive through and clap and wave and all of that kind of thing. So those things are coming too, yeah,
You're going to see a lot of different things
after May 4th.
happening. I mean, with all of our schools, we're really excited. You know, our principals have just been leaders. I mean, and I was a principal for a long time, and I'm amazed at the leadership we've gotten from all of our principals, K-12, because they really are out there on an island right now. We can support them virtually, and we work with them, but it's not the same as being able, my department was in their schools every day. I mean, and not being able to be there, it's killing me, it's killing my program specialists, it's killing my folks. I know it's killing Gen Beck's folks and the area directors, but they're really doing a phenomenal job. And they come up with great ideas, and they've been very patient, because I was a principal that liked to run very fast. And sometimes the superintendent, the deputy superintendent had to tell me, slow it down, we're going to do that. So I admire some of my peers that do that now, but we just want to make sure that we're addressing public health, but at the same time, we've got to do something for these kids. So thank you for your time.
Michael, two things before
Yes,
you
sir.
go. We talked about this the other day, and I like the plan. I got a couple questions.
Sure.
Because I went to all the graduations last year, and I saw how organized it was and putting it together. And one thing I saw that you guys did was you guys like had a map, a pre-seated map. Is that possible, instead of, in lieu of having the graduation practice, have a seating map given to the kids when they pick up their cap and gown, so that it maybe help facilitate them sitting faster? And, you know, they know they're on row 2, seat 10. They don't have to be trying to dilly-dally around.
It's a great idea. What we're probably going to have to end up doing is having Amelia Bray, who is another just unbelievable worker for our district, bring out chairs so we can start spacing it out. We want to make sure that we space it out, because in order to do that, we would have to make sure we know how many chairs. We've done the math and know that we can, Forest and Westport are going to be a challenge, but we can get it done. But our other schools will be much easier to be able to do. But yes, that is a great idea.
And then the other thing that I had, have we thought about doing something with Suntran? The district doing something with Suntran, as far as, we know there's 8 high schools that's going to be out there that's graduating. We partner with them to wrap 8 buses designated for each high school, and from the Marion County School District, celebrating those kids.
We could certainly look in. No, I have not thought about that. That's a great idea. We could certainly look into that. I'm not opposed to it.
I don't think we're going to be able to wrap Suntrans.
Whatever, you know, they have the murals or whatever they have on the buses. I don't know.
Yeah,
Thank you, Kevin.
I can speak to Suntran, having worked with them in the past. Most of those buses are already wrapped for years at a time.
Okay.
To even get on the calendar for one of those buses. We can check, but my experience has been those contracts are signed years
Okay.
in advance.
Okay.
Well, they
Thanks.
have that Christmas parade banners and different banners over by the McPherson complex hung up for different things,
They
so.
normally have one across
something like that.
Silver Springs Boulevard, and then, was that 25th? They have one, a big banner across or something.
so those are usually done on an annual basis, and you sign up. Now, many of those dates may already be chosen.
We typically, my office takes care of that, and we have to sign up for those almost a year and a half in advance. We do have a banner that hangs over 25th that will say, "Congratulations, class of 2020." Getting it over the boulevard is a whole different story, because it's dealing with different entities. But I'll have my secretary check with the city to see if perhaps those weeks have opened up because of COVID.
And because so many things have been canceled, there is a
Right.
good chance that some of that may have
Right.
been opened.
Right.
But you have to get on a year and a half to 2 years.
Okay.
Well, with so many local businesses reaching out to you, maybe they might take it upon themselves to put it on their marquees
Right.
and things like that. That would be most welcome.
I hope they're listening, and CP and all those
They are.
guys, so I know they're
We
listening.
can definitely.
Yeah, because the general spirit has been one of outreach and really wanting to help, and I think we've all been inundated with suggestions and saying, yes, I want to help, so.
And we know the CEP, when we ask them to do something, they get on it right away, and they have the ability to message so many people,
I expect to get a text before we get out of the meeting this.
probably.
Yeah.
And you know something, if it's on the marquee at the high schools, actually the parents like could stop by the high school with their kids like over the summer and have a picture of the parents with the marquee and their diploma, and they can dress in their gown and they can be in front of their high school marquee.
And there's a horse farm right across from North Marion High, and they always do a big banner, so every part of the community can do something if they want to.
Mr. McAteer, thank you. I think this is going to help calm a lot of parents and graduates, knowing that we actually are going to do something and we can get the word out. Will the high school principals be able to get the word out today?
Yeah, well, I need to have a conversation with them about mornings. I need to have a conversation with them about dates, because we literally have not picked when their graduations were. That was fruitless until I spoke to you. Dr. Mayer was adamant that we weren't going to.
What were our old graduation days?
Right, I wanted to talk about the dates.
I got it, I don't have it on top of my head. I want to say they started on the Monday of that. MTI was the 18th, I believe.
May.
And I think we started on the 21st at the Livestock Pavilion. 22nd, we had two, and then we came back the next week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I think
What
the
are we
last,
thinking about in June?
June, what are my dates again?
15th through
Through
the
the
20th.
20th.
Why,
Just move them
why
all
did
over?
we choose those? That's what I was curious, because I was wondering why we chose June 15th, because, again, I've heard from the community that I think it's important to have real time, because they have planned on this, and there's, you know.
They have families
you're-
coming over and stuff.
Well, that, but it's very celebratory. You know, it's a milestone when we all know that when people graduate. But again, there may be people that are leaving for military, moving, and other reasons. And so, my personal opinion is probably to keep things real time. But I mean, it's not like there's anything going on in our schools right now where we couldn't, make this happen in early June or into May as opposed to middle, unless there's something I don't know or.
Well,
I postponed the social distance order and to see what the governor was doing.
I think we're fixing to open up 1st of May, a lot of
From
stuff.
our lips to
anyway.
God's ears, yes, so.
And I'll be honest with you, we were skeptical. We looked at what other districts were doing. Hillsborough announced yesterday they're not doing until July. We wanted to make Seminole a month ago, went with June and July. I mean, we've had.
Like you said, they did it a month ago.
Yeah.
So much has changed in the last 3 or 4 weeks with treatment and all kinds of stuff, and opening up. And because remember, a month ago we thought we might not open up till July and all that, and things are really moving quickly right now. And like some of them, their families may be coming. If they open up the Florida border, some of the Georgia families might be coming down to be like with the families at their homes, and they could go to their graduation, and they could come back home and be with their aunts and uncles at their house or whatever, and try to keep something as close to normal as possible without people just having to hang out here and wait for that. It's kind of controlling their lives.
So could Mr. McAteer talk with the principals? My sense is we might hear something Friday from the
Yeah.
governor, and then we have board meeting Tuesday, so he
That's
can come back Tuesday evening. But I
'cause
like
we-
the idea of keeping it sooner. I do, so. we'll
I was trying to mirror what other folks were doing to make sure. I mean, again, as you said, it's ever changing, and with public health, I'm not an expert in that field. I know enough to be dangerous, but we haven't. Every day changes, something changes where something's lifted, something's moved. But in our state so far, nothing has officially been lifted. So until that point, here's what I'll do, because we can do this very easily. I'll come up with 3 sets of dates, and the one set of date will be with the current graduation schedule the way it is, just at different locations. That be okay?
And then also, I know you probably already have this, but if this doesn't happen and things change or things open, what is there a plan B?
Plan B would be we're going to have to look at virtual or drive-in options.
Okay.
When Hillsborough actually did their press release yesterday, I thought it was very interesting. I was always thinking this, but I hadn't publicized it. They were saying that basically at the end, if they're not able to happen in July, that we will explore virtual options, which is pretty wide open, which is probably what I would say to you. We'll explore virtual options.
You can't do exactly like MTI was, like there was this one date, like you have to back it up a little and get
So,
them
I
all
mean,
done by
even
the
if
end
we
of
did
May.
the first week in June, if you did, nobody's going to be vacationing on Memorial Day. They're not going to be able to go to a hotel or anything.
Might.
But I
I
mean,
have people coming to one of my condos.
if we did the 31st, which is a Saturday, through June 6th,
Again,
I mean,
Dr. Mayor and the boards, we'll come up with a plan based on what you ask.
Talk to the principals and see how they feel in the earliest.
Like to move it up in 2 weeks, it might be a little quick, like Ms. Kelly,
Getting everything.
like getting everything done, like in just 2 weeks might be, like to start MTI, like the 15th or 20th or 18th, might be a little quick, but see how fast we can do it. If we fast track, like,
I'll talk to the principals.
where you can notify
I'll
all
talk to
the.
the principals today and see what because they're going to have to do most of the heavy lifting without people on campus. They do have essential personnel. But they're going to have to do the program and get it printed and those types of things, and that's.
Maybe,
Yep.
maybe the last week in May, you know, or something like that. Maybe not as early as the 18th or whatever that first date was, but like
And
the
I'll do
last week.
I'll do the following week. How about that?
Well,
The
let me say this.
24th through the 30th.
Well, let me say this too, while we're thinking about this. We do know with graduation, as a board, we're going to have to make some tough decisions because we're going to have to call some people in to get some of this stuff done that may be off work right now.
Well, they become essential employees then.
They were all essential employees all the time.
Yeah, but the governor lets essential employees work and, you know.
Graduation's essential.
Here's one thing that I want to bring up just to keep in your mind from my high school principal hat. Some of our seniors have had personal situations where distance learning has been tough for them because they either had to work because they're in a job at Publix or somewhere like that where they can work, or fast food drive-throughs and things like
And they're
that.
working full-time.
And they're working, and we're working with them to get them, make sure they're caught up, and we're going to talk to you about grading in a future meeting after Dr. Merritt works with the union. But we want to make sure that we give them as much time as they can. I don't want to. I like the last week of May as our first one. I think if we leave our traditional ones, we won't give them enough time. They probably need an extra week
I think so too, to get the schedules over.
to be able to get everything.
Especially if we move it to morning. Actually, probably it'd be better for the ones that are in the takeout and everything to do the morning time would probably be better.
And we'll need to look at instructional minutes also for seniors. That's because Stephen went over just K-12, but he didn't go K-11, but he didn't go over seniors. And seniors, we traditionally release slightly early, but we have to make sure that we meet our instructional minutes for them because that's a huge funding issue.
But they're usually out, like the 15th or something anyway, so you've got,
No, the issue you've got is hurricane days. We've already, and we're moving forward, as Stephen said, is if the extended spring break, we're not going to get those days back. We have to. We may, but we have to. And with seniors, that's a little tricky. And I think I'm probably looking at, the day after Labor Day. I'm not Labor Day. Memorial Day. The 26th might be the first time that we want to move forward for that.
okay, that's fine.
So we are going to talk about grading and how we're going to handle grading. And is that coming up very soon at a workshop?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, because I've got some ideas on that, but if we're going to talk about it, I'll wait. But I think
I've spoken
we
to
need-
all the high school principals
definitely
and
need.
middle school
I'm not,
principals.
yeah, and elementary, we got to talk about it all.
Becca's talked to them. Ms. Becca's talked to the elementary folks. We're
Okay.
just
In
working.
our cabinet meeting, that was great discussion yesterday.
Okay.
And
As
so
long
those
as-
discussions have
as
started with
long-
the union, as we need their input as well.
So will it be at the April 30th? Will we have it by then? Will we be able to discuss it by then?
We'll discuss it, yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's,
So that can be on the April 30th agenda as well as
So that's next
COVID-19
week.
update. That's next
Okay.
Thursday.
all right.
Mr. McAteer, thank you. Listen, I had great discussion with you about this prior, and I know you guys, the team that was working on graduation was really, really working hard on this. And I know there's a lot of parents that have been calling all of us and reaching out to us because they've been anxious to find out what's going on. We can give you some information. We didn't want to give you any bad information, but we wanted everybody to get the same information at the same time. So
That's one of the things that kind of, it was a kind of a Pandora's box. I wanted to say something, but we want to make sure that we have our ducks in a row. And I'll leave you with this. I go back to my favorite Mr. James quote because I was at Dunellen as a principal long after he was there as a principal. But this quote, there's usually not a decision that you can make that you can't sleep on.
Right.
So we took a lot of time and slept on our decisions and thought about it and really went forward to try to make it. And again, we know that we're going to have to, it may be a fluid situation where we may have to make adjustments, but I appreciate the board's input.
And one thing too, the Department of Education, and I've talked to them, and they really, everything they've told us is kind of their recommendation. We are a local district, and we can make these decisions with the superintendent and the board together, because everything that they've done is just recommendations. It's not law, and they don't have the power to make a law. But if the governor starts lifting some stuff and everything, I think that, we can move forward and get this done a little sooner, because the longer we put it off, the fewer kids are going to show up because the older it's going to get. It's just going to kind of get like, oh, that's old hat. We're now in a different world. And keep them while they've got a little bit of excitement about it. So,
And it is exciting how it's taking shape.
We're gonna try. Thank you.
Lots of similarities to the traditional model.
Thank you.
Will become-
Gives us hope, doesn't it?
It does.
yeah, I think so.
Really good feeling.
I think it lets us move along.
Well, you're dealing with a group of kids that have lost a lot of things their senior year, senior skip parties and grad bash and grad night and prom. Those things they lost, so we have to give them some type of normalcy in this whole process.
Is it going to be mandatory that they wear masks, though? I mean, when I think of 1,200, you said
That
it
was
could
my
be.
question too.
Is it going to be mandatory? Because that's a lot of people.
Think that we go by the recommendation of public health at that point. And again, I'd hate to say that now because it's so fluid. My gut tells me if we did it right, in a week or 2 weeks, yes, they would have to. But I mean, again, it's really going to depend on we're going to do everything that we can to go by the recommendations of our local and state health authorities. Because again, to answer your question, if it's 4 weeks and 5 weeks and things have been lifted and they still want to wear a mask, they certainly can.
Take the mask off for the picture, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, they can do that, but I'm just thinking, I want us to be realistic because we are in a pandemic and you going into Publix or wherever and
A lot of people not.
you can go to Lowe's or wherever and they're not wearing them and that concerns me when you have a big gathering. And so, I mean,
And it may be something where if we're still in the same recommendations from public health, that we have to look for some donations for masks.
Right.
So,
But the medical world's moving so quickly. I heard just this morning about 2 people who were on ventilators when we know the percentage, the 80% or pass on that go on the ventilators and even higher in some places. And they gave that plasma from people that they donated to just 2 patients. So it was 100% got off the, so 2 patients, 100% of the 2 came off their ventilators. And so, so there's things that's happening, and I know that's going to bring America together because people who do test that they are building titers and they do have the antibodies, giving plasma out, things for the fall might be a whole lot different when they've got some treatment options because we may never have a vaccine, never. And so, but I think the treatment options, I was listening to Dr. Deborah yesterday and she said the treatment options are going to be different. So there's a lot of hope. But just those 2 plasma patients just announced this morning how well that's working. That was great news. So.
And hopefully these kids will be, kind of have, hate to call it bragging rights of being the only class to have ever.
History.
In history, they're kind of making history, and I can almost, how they want to they want to decorate the tops of their caps. If they wear masks, they can, there's lots of opportunity for creativity. I'm not going to try to.
They can decorate their masks. Class of 2020.
That's right.
Okay, it does.
Thank you.
You bet.
And that concludes my briefing.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor.
Thank you.
We want to move forward with our agenda with our district staffing plan update from Ms. Teresa Boston Ellis.
Chair Cummings, Vice Chair Thrower, board members, Dr. Mayer stepped out a little bit, Attorney Green, and Mrs. Martinez Lopez. Good morning. You've had a very intriguing conversation, so I'll change it up a little bit. I had originally, I spent some time talking to Chair Cummings and Dr. Mayer last week. We were talking about how to help some processes in our school district and provided a recommendation to them, but I will defer that recommendation to when Dr. Grantham brings the staffing plan back, and I'll bring up that position at that time. But I do have a little pre-COVID-19 highlight on the budget, if the chair would allow me to share this with you. Okay. As I said, after the legislative session ended in March, we were slightly excited about the possibilities of receiving about a $14 million increase in our state and local funding. And I just wanted to just give you a quick snapshot of what's going on pre-COVID-19. You're very
This is pre-COVID.
pre-COVID-19. That's why I keep saying pre-COVID-19. So on slide 1, you'll see that the allocation was going to increase. The base student allocation would now be $4,319.49, which represents a $40 increase. Also, the mental health was receiving a modest, about $400,000 increase. I believe that was a request of the governor. And also, a part of our projected $14 million increase was a projection of additional FTE. We were projected to have about 517 additional FTE. And in addition to that, because of the work that Dr. Alves did on the IEPs for our exceptional students, we're picking up about $1,000 weighted FTE for our ESE population. So that is a big piece of the increase. Also, there were reductions in digital classrooms, and the best and brightest, as you know, went away, and that was about $4 million. And to offset the cost of the new allocation, which is the teacher salary enhancement, that came out for Marion County to be $7.3 million. So the reduction in the best and brightest helped offset some of the additional costs. As you recall, the governor wanted us to get to 47.5 for beginning teachers. The legislators sort of backed off on that, and they're giving us this allocation, and 80% of it has to go towards bringing up our teachers as best as we can, close as we can to that 47.5. Our last estimate was that it would be in the 45,000. Not sure where it's going to be next year.
What is our average? What is our start, like?
It's
how much-
39. It would be a big increase. Also, the funding compression adjustment that you recall that we've been getting every year and keeping our fingers crossed, that was maintained, but they expanded the number of districts that were eligible. So we will still get it, but we're going to have a decrease in the amount for the funding compression adjustment. But what's out there on the horizon, we know that there's $170 million from the federal government that is being allocated to states. We don't know what our allocation is, and I've been in meetings every week talking with DOE and other finance council members, and they don't know when they're going to get it. They don't know when they're going to file for Florida's portion of it, and what we would need to use that for. So we believe that that will be similar to the stabilization dollars, if you remember a few years back, that we received to help shore up whatever shortfalls or some of the shortfalls from state and local funding. Again, this is pre-COVID-19.
Ms. Boston-Ellis,
Yes.
I don't see our FRS, the new FRS calculation.
That's
Okay.
a couple of pages. The next slide is basically reminding you of the funding that we receive from state and local, and this is Marion County's, again, pre-COVID-19 allocation. In the yellow box, it's $333.4 million, which, as I stated previously, is about a $14 million increase for Marion County based on additional base student allocation dollars, additional FTE. So those are the primary part, and as well as the teacher salary increases. So on the third page, we're talking about budget challenges. The first one is our unassigned, fund balance. We are required to maintain the 3%, but we need to make sure that in our unassigned fund balance, we have enough dollars in that category so we are prepared for another emergency or anything outside of a normal operation. Again, we talk about fluctuation in enrollment. We have ups and downs, not sure how All of this is going to affect our enrollment, and as you know, enrollment at certain times of the year determine the revenue that we will receive. October and February count. The impact of choice schools. This year, for the first time, the Family Empowerment Scholarship impacted us. That was about 322 students. The majority of them were kindergarten, first and second. So this is money that is taken off the top of our revenue. These students are included in our FTE, but the dollars are allocated to wherever the parent decides the child will go. So we had about 322. I understand the governor is expanding that program, so there may be additional students involved in that Family Empowerment Scholarship. As Mrs. McCall mentioned, there's an increase in benefits. The retirement percentage went up. It hadn't gone up this much in a long time. And basically, that's going to be about $3.4 million projected for Marion County, additional $3.4 million, which is substantial for us. As usual, the challenge will be meeting all of the unfunded mandates, such as school safety, and continuing to add those things that are required by legislators to keep our schools safe. And we always talk about maintaining our buildings, HVACs, chillers. As our buildings get older and older, we need to start probably allocating more dollars to that. And in addition to that, the charter schools once again received all of the PICO dollar allocation. So K-12 setting will not receive any PICO dollars. And then the last item has to do with the economy. We're just really not sure about any kind of a proration. It has happened. It happened in 2007-08. I will never forget that first calculation, and then 2 months later, they cut the budget. We were already in school. We were already operating. So we have to keep that in the back of our mind again. And these are the things that will impact our, not only the revenue stream, but our expenditures as well. So that's just to highlight pre-COVID to keep in the back of your mind. And as we learn information, I will continue to bring you updates. And I know you're getting different things from different people, but I just want to make sure that there is a general conversation and discussion about where we stand. Even as we build our budget, right now, we hear from we won't be harmed to make sure you cut between 10 and 30% of your budget. Be prepared to do that. So we are looking at different scenarios, and we'll be ready to present that to you based on what happens. Are there any questions?
I have a question maybe for you. I wonder if at this point, would it be a good idea maybe to invite Mr. Albright in so he can talk to us about like our referendum dollars, what he's seeing, maybe moving forward and stuff like that, and what that would look like? Do you think that might be a good idea for us to start that communication now, and so we can be, fiscally conservative is what we need to be, and I think that's a key component too.
I have asked Alice to watch our property tax revenue this year, and it's pretty much online. But you do make a great point that may be impacted next year in terms of what we receive from property taxes. Because the last recession, we were impacted. The property values dropped, and there was a loss of revenue. So, I mean, if it pleases the board.
Is it something?
Yeah,
I think it would be good just
in March, the housing prices, there were more homes sold, and the prices were about the same. But I think you're right, Kelly. I think if we can get the state open back up and the economy moving, we may see a little dip. But I think people going to large gatherings, even if the state opens back up, I think people are going to be very cautious about what they choose to go to, which is definitely going to impact everything in our state because we're such a hospitality tourist state.
Right. And the bulk of our funding, the state and local funding, the bulk of it is sales tax.
Yep.
You make a good point. It's the sales tax. that funds the K-12.
Yes. So I think, can you reach out to him, or you want me to, or how?
I'll talk to Dr. Mayer.
Okay. And then I'll touch back with you to see where we stand with it.
Okay.
You said that there is a reduction in the digital classroom.
Yes, sir. And we were up over $1 million 2 years ago.
You were over.
We were receiving over $1 million. Last year, there was a reduction of about 300,000, and then this year, there's
no money.
another
Cut
reduction.
everything.
Yeah, in my opinion, those dollars were shifted to the teacher's salary.
And that's going to be a hit for us because of where we are right now,
Right.
as far as doing virtual teaching.
Right. And we're hopeful that allocation from the federal government will help us shore up the technology.
The CARE, is that part of that CARE
Yes,
package? Okay, I was
yes.
going to ask that.
That's that $170 million that's going to
Yes.
the K-12 setting, but DOE has not filed an application yet. I believe they're still waiting on instructions from the federal government.
On how to apply.
Yes. So they would have to apply, just like with the stabilization dollars we had before. They apply, and then we submit an application about what we're going to do with it as well.
And timing-wise, I'm grateful if this virus had to happen, that it happened during a time of a relative strong and recovered economy in many ways. Imagine if this had happened on the heels of the Great Recession. It would have been a 1-2 punch for sure. And from
the end of the year for the kids, at least it wasn't in January.
Right, right. And from what I've been reading, the governor has not signed the budget yet.
Right.
So we're still waiting on that, and some things could change, especially because we've had to go completely digital by and large. And there's, again, according to my understanding, there's reserves that have been built up at the state level that may help us smooth the way through this a little better than if it had come at a different time in our economic cycle overall.
There's a lot of what ifs.
Yes,
And,
too many.
We're waiting. I've heard that he may veto a lot of items in the budget just to make sure that the K-12 and higher academic is shored up for what they need, what we need. But just nothing certain for right now.
You know, it's hard to believe that 4 weeks could cause this much fiasco. Like, shutting down for 4 weeks could cause the issues that it's caused for so many people.
Well, what the concern is, it's not necessarily just for 4 weeks. We don't really know. It's
I mean, so far.
ongoing.
No,
Yes,
I
so
mean, like,
far.
where we are right now. We're looking at where we are right now. This just happened 4 weeks ago. It seems like it's been 2 months or 3 months. It's been the longest 4 weeks, you know? Hard to believe that could change a world.
It's the loss of life.
Well, Ms.
I think,
Barcelos, we know that you're going to keep an eye on this and make sure that we know what's going on. But I agree with Ms. King. We have to be really fiscally responsible right now, and where we have to be possibly looking ahead of this thing and be smart with the money.
And you would be, happy to know we are saving dollars. There's
Yeah, because I know
no
we
fuel,
have
the electricity
no fuel
bills
and
are,
stuff like that. And,
travel has been pretty much eliminated. So there are pockets where we're working very hard with Dr. Mayer's help and the administration to just maintain costs and only spend what we actually need. Right now, we're working with the grants that are getting extensions to make sure that they're following those procedures and make sure that we are allowing them to spend so that they, can use those funds.
So will you have a report for us on what we are saving in fuel and electricity and just, it would be interesting just to know when this concludes, especially by the end of the year, what were our cost savings?
I would hope you would see that as fund balance grows. Right now, we had projected it to be about 25 million at the end of the year. But, looking at our projections and where we're seeing that spending is down, we believe that's going to build up the fund balance.
Okay.
Yes, but I don't want to give any false hopes because I don't know what, you know.
And it's amazing how in this short amount of time that like people are working from home and things are getting done and like everything kept, the administration, the district, the superintendent, everybody just kind of kept things rolling from home. And I mean, I can't imagine that many people working from home. I bet the tech emails are just blowing up with
Yes,
people
ma'am.
talking back and forth with each other.
Well, and Zoom is blowing up.
It's been amazing. I congratulate, the superintendent and the staff and everybody because I just look at like 4 weeks, how much we've done and how things have changed and how many heads had to come together to make it happen. And it's just amazing. So thank y'all. Thank all of y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Any public comment? There being none, all right, do we need a break?
I already took mine.
Let's do a break. Let's do a break, guys, for 10 minutes. Be back at 10:35.
Hey, Kevin. Kevin.
Yes, whoever's on the phone bridge, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, it's Andy Carroll. Just if questions come up, really the only person that we can hear on the end is the actual speaker. We really can't hear any of the board members, just if a question's going to be asked.
We will ask them to speak more clearly and into the microphones, and we'll boost the volume as much as we can without creating feedback here in the boardroom.
Thank you.
Okay, you can.
Kevin, it's Sharon.
Yes, Sharon, thank you
I'm
for
working
joining
on
us again.
My internet went down, so I'm trying to work from my phone here. I
Okay.
think, am I still up there, or it looks like I left again?
Looks like you left. Hold on, let me check.
Okay, I think I left. So let me try. Let me go back to the,
Correct, Sharon, I do not see your video right now.
okay, let me see if I can find the link again. Okay, here we go. I'm going to, okay, here we go.
We're in a 10-minute break, by the way.
Yeah, I saw that. I still can hear. I'm got my headset on, but it's just the internet seems to be a little dicey today. All right, so it says the meeting host will let you in soon. Okay. Then my camera wasn't working, so I had to I was trying to get that to work.
Okay, Sharon, you're there now.
Oh, there
I
we
just
are.
admitted you. Yes. Good.
Okay, great, thank you. Turn off my video. Go back on mute. Do I need to go on mute, Kevin, or you have it muted?
We're going to mute everybody until the meeting reconvenes. Okay? So we'll mute you
Okay.
now. You can mute them.
Okay, thank you.
We're back on record. We're going to continue with our agenda. We're going to have Ms. Lori Lively from our annual review of health insurance.
Good morning, Chair Cummings, board members, Mrs. Green, Dr. Mayer, Ms. Martinez-Lopez. Typically in April every year, we do our annual review of health insurance with Andy Carroll from Florida Blue. So we will be starting with that today. Additionally, as our focus has been the last few months, we're going to talk about the self-funding analysis and where we are from the last time we talked about that. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our contractual relationships and what we look to do in the future to consolidate some of those, and then we're going to talk about wellness. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Andy Carroll from Florida Blue.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Lori. Hope everyone is well. Appreciate the time and appreciate the opportunity to come back again and share with you what we're going to be reviewing this morning is a summary of the claims experience of the district from 2019 versus 2018. So we're, very similar format that what we've shared in the past, but just so everyone is aware, we're looking at 2019 data versus 2018 data when we're looking at current versus prior. So in the upper left-hand corner, the Gator Blue is the 2019, the Gator Orange is the 2018, and then that other shade of blue in this particular scenario would be 2017. And really what this document is, or this chart is showing you is PEPY is per employee per year. So basically the claims experience broken down by each employee, and then per member per year right below it would be all members, so including your employees, their dependents, and their children, and their spouses. So 2019 versus 2018, a little over 2.6% increase in overall claims costs. So, definitely a different message and trend than what we were discussing in years past. We'll move to the right, population by coverage tier. Really what this illustrates is just the enrollment that we received and we had on file throughout the year. And, you can see a slight decrease in actual contracts. So that would, for us, would be employees or retirees. The members, actually a slight increase. So again, that would be the spouses as well as the dependent children. And then right below that graph shows you the breakdown of the demographics of that population that we had, with an average age of all members basically being the same as it was the year prior, it was 42.9. Below that is a summary of the high-cost cases, and we use a threshold like we have in the past of $100,000 in total paid claims or more. It's very similar to what we have looked at in the past. The first row, high-cost members, you will notice that there was actually more members that exceeded the threshold of $100,000 in 2019 versus 2018, which equated to 0.7% of your population. However, the total amount of claims dollars paid for that particular population, those 54 folks, actually went down a touch, just over 1% from 2018. If you go all the way to the bottom of that screen, you'll see the percent of total per member per month. Basically, the high-cost case members accounted for almost 30% of the overall spend of the plan for 2019. Thomas? Going to the next side, the first graph is representing prescription drug program. Generic, brand non-specialty, and brand specialty are the three categories, the three columns that we'll discuss. The first one being generic, and what the orange illustrates is the number of scripts dispensed. So almost 91% of all the prescriptions that were dispensed in 2019, basically 91% accounted for just 20% of the overall pharmacy cost, which was just under $8 million for 2019 for Marion schools. And then concurrently, as you go across, you can see, less than 9% brand with about 36% of the cost, and then specialty medications would be the third, just under 1%, equated to almost 45%. So obviously very expensive medications and very similar to what we've seen in the past several years, and you're no different than any other group on that far right-hand side. Where y'all definitely exceed other customers that we have is in the generic, the 90.5%, and that is based on your plan design, but far exceeds our book of business, which is around 85% of all scripts being dispensed generic. So that's, a testament to the plan design, and the cost of that obviously is reflective, only about 20% of the overall cost of that $8 million in our spend. The row below that, this is showing the top 3 preventative screenings that we measure each year for y'all in terms of a reporting standpoint. The orange represents the Florida Blue benchmark, and the blue represents Marion School's actual, and then the white writing where it says current. So, for example, the first column, we're referring to breast cancer screening. The benchmark 67.4%. For 2019, we had 75.4% of the eligibles screened, which is a 1% increase from 2018. And you can continue to go over to the right where you will notice cervical cancer as well as colorectal cancer. All 3 areas far exceed our Florida Blues book of business. I know we're going to talk about wellness in a little bit, but this is just another verification that the wellness program that y'all have and that Laura runs is working and running phenomenally. And then finally, the last graph below breaks up the actual spend, the claims dollars, into locations of service. So you will see inpatient, outpatient, ERs, emergency room, professionals, all the providers, and then the total bucket. The blue is the actual dollars spent, were those in-network or out-of-network. The grayish were those in-network providers, the percentage of in-network providers that were used. And then far right-hand orange in every column is the actual discount that was achieved based off of the claims. And so if you go to the far right, you'll see that almost 100% of the claims dollars were spent in-network, 95% in-network utilization, meaning 95 out of every 100 doctors or providers that were used, your employees and members were in-network, which provided and afforded a almost 70% network discount, meaning 30 cents on every dollar is what was basically paid in claims expenses. So phenomenal numbers across the board there. In the new world we live in, I was asked to provide some of these things that we are doing as it relates to the current pandemic. As the gentleman was speaking about graduation and how this is fluid, we actually agree with that. We have a nightly sales update that goes throughout the company. Things continually change, updates continually come, whether it's local, state, or federal, that impacts a lot of these decisions. So what I'm sharing with you right now is what we have in play. Some of the timelines may change, may extend, and I'm sure you can appreciate that is all up in the air right now. None of us have ever gone through anything like this. But so these first bullets are some of the things that we did pretty much immediately in response to what was going on, and really it was all testing. As you remember, it was very challenging to find available testing, but as that has continued to work itself out and more testing sites have become available, all testing is being paid at 100% or zero member cost share, including your Medicare population that has that product with us as well. Through June 1st, and again, this is one of those areas at this time, this is where we're at. And as things change, we will continue to update Nancy and Lori and Thomas, but basically waiving all cost shares for the treatment of COVID. At the beginning of March, there wasn't even claims codes for this, and so there's been multiple claims codes, not only for testing, but treatment as well, that have been identified and created over the last month. So there's a $0 cost share at this point in time through June 1st for all of our members. Also applies to your Medicare population. We waived prior authorization requirements for patients going to hospitals and long-term acute care facilities, skilled nursing, rehab. We were trying to remove any barriers any barriers from care. We waived early medication refill limits. This also helped increase and will help increase adherence on maintenance medications. We implemented a special enrollment period of which Marion Schools participated in, basically allowing folks that did not have coverage or did not elect coverage the opportunity to elect coverage. And that was an opportunity for all of our fully insured customers, and the majority of our self-insured customers took advantage of that as well. Teledoc, which is Teledoc is an organization that's been in the national news. We do have a partnership with them. They provide telehealth, and we partner with them and provide that to Marion Schools as well as our other fully insured accounts. We went ahead and waived the cost share for Teledoc, at least for the next 90 days. As of now, that's May 31st, June 1st as well, but that probably will be changing, over the next course of time. What we did as an organization that is in all 67 counties in the state of Florida. So we're a Florida organization. We partnered with New Directions Behavioral Health for members and non-members very early on for behavioral health counselors at no additional cost. So anything that was needed from a stress help, toll-free helpline was provided between Florida Blue and New Directions for members and non-members. A non-enforcement policy, this gets a little technical, but basically a non-enforcement policy has to deal with if folks were furloughed or laid off, basically kind of clarifying and opening up an opportunity for folks that, unfortunately got furloughed or laid off. When it's time to get back to work, bringing those folks back in and allowing those folks to come on outside of a normal open enrollment period. And finally, allowing our customers the opportunity to pay premiums. As you can imagine, a good amount of group health insurance businesses, small organizations and small businesses that, really are scraping and pulling dollars from wherever they can. So we just made that a broad policy for our customers to be able to pay premiums or delay paying premiums through the end of May. So those are just some of the things, the major things that we have done. As items change, as dates change, obviously we like I said, we get that update each night, and then I update all of my customers, and we'll do so with Lori, Nancy, and Thomas as well. So again, I appreciate you, appreciate the time, and hope everyone's well, and happy to take any questions if you have any.
No questions.
All right,
Andy.
thank you all so much. I'm just going to turn off video, but I'll stay here.
Kevin, do we have Sharon?
Okay, this is Sharon. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Sharon.
Perfect. All right, thank you. And can you see me? I turned the video on. I'm not sure if you can see me or not. Well, I'll go ahead and get started. But hello, everybody. And again, this very interesting meeting this morning to hear all the challenges that you all are facing and decisions you have to make across the county. Healthcare being, a priority as well because of what's going on. Thomas, if you can move to the next slide. Thank you. So today I'm here to update. Last time I saw you, it was March 5th, and we talked about going self-funded and the self-funded feasibility studies and whether it made sense at this time or not. So we went ahead and, if you can move forward, Thomas. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Never mind. I got it. Right behind. We went ahead and updated the projections that we showed you last time to include data through March. And as we discussed, data fluctuates each month, so you never have a solid, straight line of what your projections are going to be. So we updated the data through March. And last time we talked about including one full-time employee in the as a cost for going self-funded. Prior to today, we had that built as a separate cost. we built that into the premiums this time because it's an ongoing cost and feel that should be included in the ongoing administrative cost of the plan. Overall, between November and March, your trend has been below average on the medical side and above average on the healthcare side. So that's the same as it was last time. Your enrollment is slightly down from November. And right now, we've made no changes in our assumptions due to COVID-19. I do have a couple slides on the projected impact of this condition, which I'll get to after the projections. Thomas? Thank you. Okay, so this is the same slide we had before with updated data through March. So the top line is the total claims paid projected to 2021, and it still shows that there's a savings between the fully insured and the self-funded, and the reason for that is because when Andy was talking about the large claims, in the self-funded scenario, you will not be paying claims over $350,000. So you're insuring the large claims with your self-insured premiums. So we remove those from our projections. And we also trend the information forward, and we use different trend rates between a fully insured carrier versus a self-funded carrier. So that results in a $1.5 million in savings. The next is the administration, where we added in the FTE. Again, there's savings there resulting because you're not paying the profit and various taxes that a fully insured plan has to pay. There's also pharmacy rebates. We assumed half will be received in 2021. Rebates are variable. They could come anywhere from 6 months to 12 months after you start the plan. So we assumed 6 months. It could change. So that gets you down to a total expense of $46 million versus $49, resulting in $2.7 million in savings by moving to self-funded. Then the next line there where it shows 7.6, that's your OIR 60-day safe harbor surplus. So if you continued funding the plan at the same rate you are today, we project you'd have a $2.6 million surplus that would be able to go towards your safe harbor requirement. And then the bottom it just shows the assumptions that we used. Thomas. Okay. Now the next slide is about COVID-19. So our actuaries up in Princeton developed a model to try to estimate what is going to happen as a result of this. I'm sure you've heard on the news all sorts of increases, the 40% increase in premiums. There's been a lot of news out there. But our actuaries went ahead and pulled data worldwide on rates and incidence and infection rates and came up with a model. So for inputs in the model, we on the far right side, we put in your estimated per member per year medical and pharmacy costs and your membership. We also said that you would be waiving the copay for testing and treatment. Now, since there are so many assumptions going on that get put into this, we did 5 different scenarios. So the first line shows what percent of the population is getting tested. So that runs from 5 to 50%. Next is the incident of infection rate, which runs from 0.5 to 10%. Now, this morning, while you guys were talking about the graduation, I looked up Marion County, and right now you have as of yesterday, 130 cases, and about 28,000, 130 cases, so you end up at 37.3 per 100,000. Your infection rate, incidence of infection, if you look on this chart, is 0.037. Our scenario 1 starts at 0.5, so you're below scenario 1. We don't expect it to get to scenario 5, but if you lived in New York or somewhere that's super hot spot, you could look at scenario 5. So what this is showing is your testing rate, your incident of infection, how much it's going to impact your cost. The COVID cost is going to go up because we're testing for that and you're covering 100% of it. And then the non-COVID impact is ironically going down. So we looked at the hurricane. We compared this to when a hurricane happens. So if there's a hurricane, everything shuts down. All elective surgeries are stopped. A lot of medical care is not rendered in the hurricane period. As a result, your medical claims decrease. So the theory would be that you have pent-up demand, so it would go up sometime in the future at an equal amount. Well, what we found with hurricanes is that the increase in the claims does not 100% offset the decrease that happens during the hurricane period, resulting in a savings to the plan. So what normally happens is you'll have a dip in your claims, and then it returns to normal levels, and it stays there, or a little bit higher than normal, and then goes down. But it doesn't spike equal to the hurricane period, if that makes sense. So that's why we show savings in the line 4 across the board for medical costs. And the total impact to your plan is a per member per year cost from $127 in savings up to $203 in actual cost additional. Thomas? Okay, so this graph is a visual. So the blue lines show your typical medical expenses. That's your PCP visits, your knee surgeries, your appendectomies, everything. That is your normal course of business. The gold bars show the actual cost of the COVID cases. So starting in March, we expect to see some extra costs in March we have it through August. As you know, it's very fluid. And the extra costs get added to your current costs. And then back in September, we have a little bit of spike for increased costs when people start going back, and then it returns back to normal. Now, we use scenario 3, which is middle of the pack, which you don't come close to that as far as an infection rate at this point in time. But in that scenario, there's a $500,000 savings to your plan in 2020. Now, the red dot is just a level funding. So, as you know, there's a lot of assumptions that go into this, so I won't go through all the caveats, but they're all listed there. We don't adjust for, right now we don't adjust for demographics or geography or myriad other items. But overall, we end up with a $500,000 savings in this scenario. Questions? Crazy times.
Thank you, Sharon.
Okay. Thank you.
This slide represents the additional fixed costs. It's just a recap of what we talked about when we were here last time, just a reminder about some of the things that we will need to incur costs to operate this plan on a self-funded basis. So it's basically just a recap. The figures have not changed. It's just to show you again some of those costs and where we believe they'll be. The next page talks about consolidating some of these costs and relationships. Currently, we have a lot of these services and they're contracted in different places with different people. We get a lot of assistance through Barrett Liner and Bus, who helps us facilitate a lot of these items, including the COBRA, the retiree billing, and the wellness program. And on the bottom half, you'll see that, as we've talked about, we still have to engage into a relationship with Benefit Focus. We have our flexible spending account relationship. We'll need actuarial services and consulting services. So we're looking at ways that we can consolidate some of these and not to have so many separate agreements, and try to bring some of those together, hopefully with a lot of assistance with Barrett Liner and Buses, our consulting relationship. We see that's how many of the districts operate. They put everything together under one agreement, and then that helps facilitate things without, again, all these separate relationships. So we'll be looking at those in the future. We continue to look at contract early negotiations with relationships with Benefit Focus, for example, so that will be ready if you choose to do this when the time comes in the near future.
Board, Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. I want to start by extending our sincere appreciation, both Laurel Lingle and I, with children in the education system for all you're doing right now in an unprecedented time. So thank you for your leadership. We appreciate each of you for that. What's most important as we look at this financially is what's the plan for funding the reserve requirement? So we shared this in the past. It's important for the board to remember you all are starting this consideration from fully insured to self-insured transition due to your fiduciary responsibility that you've employed over the last several years, where you've got $1.8 million approximately in current pro-share reserve fundings today. As Sharon illustrated, we're projecting a 2021, if the vote is to transition to self-funding, of an additional $2.7 million in healthcare spend savings, subtotaling at $4.5 million. Additionally, as we discussed in our March 5th meeting, we will be concluding the final months of your most recent pro-share accounting period, ending December 31st, 2020. Projected at this point, with consideration to Sharon actuarially looking at the COVID impact and non-COVID impact, of a projected additional $1.8 million in pro-share distribution that would be accounted and then distributed into the first part of 2021. So in total, at the end of the year in 2021, preliminarily, and again, these are estimates at this point in time, you need to know going in, which is very unique for most districts or any municipality making this transition, you're in an excellent financial place or position at $6.3 million in your first year of the reserve requirement. As Sharon mentioned, the state will require us to submit all the filings. That's part of the consultative agreement. We would need to make sure we are indicating to the state that you are meeting that $7.6 million reserve requirement. So to be $6.3 million just in those factors through it, estimate to this program starting very, very successfully. So we wanted to remind you of that. Next, I'd like to remind the board, several of you with us, what are called private clinics. As you look at self-funding, one of the main factors is there are other ways to mitigate or control cost, as we'll certainly have more access to claims data. The wellness program will be enhanced by way of that. But a lot of other districts and municipalities around the country have considered integrating clinic models as a part of the program. Consider it a primary medical home for your employees, potentially dependents. We have toured 2 of those facilities. One was in Pasco County Schools. It is run by an administrator named My Health On Site. We met with their administrative team and learned the ins and outs of that program. We've also toured the City of Ocala's clinic, which is administered by Care Here, the name of that administrator. And again, how does that reflect as an additional cost result in an ROI or savings to your program? Does it happen right away? Likely not. Does it happen over time? Likely. So we continue to vet those, most likely not an initial development that we would be recommending for January 1st of 2021, but something that's very important for you to keep in the back of your mind that could add value long term. What is most recently developed that I wanted to bring to your attention is the Heart of Florida Health Center here in our community, is our local federally qualified health center, is in discussions with Marion County Board of County Commissioners of creating a very similar model to what we've seen before. This is a new venture for them to consider as a clinic or quasi-clinic model. That what would be differentiating between the above mentioned 2 is the brick and mortar that they already have across graphically Marion County, the number of providers, and a program that's up and running. So I wanted to bring that to your attention as a new component for your consideration in the future of a potential partnership, maybe even intergovernmental relationship, as the county looks at this for their October renewal as we consider January and beyond. So that's what's new relative to the clinic updates, but again, a future consideration, but we wanted you to be privy to that information if you hear about it in the community.
Okay, so this is our projected timeline that you've seen previously on the human stopwatch that's always here talking about deadlines. So our next date up obviously was a May 8th meeting with the insurance committee, which makes up all three unions for their input. We're not sure that's going to take place. I've sent an email to them previous to today to ask them to watch this meeting either now or on playback so that they can hear everything currently, just in case we don't get to meet in person or can't work out a Zoom meeting or otherwise. We'll stay in contact with them. Our next important date is May 21st, where we anticipate being able to bring back the rate proposals. So that'll be your time to really look at where we're at before we ask to come back on June 4th to get your consensus and decisions on whether we move forward with the self-funding. So again, trying to keep in line with this time frame so we have enough to do the state filings and do all the things that we need to do to begin a different way of operating. So I definitely want to focus your attention on those two dates. I anticipate that what you'll hear on May 21st, on June 4th when we come back, we can answer any lingering questions that you have and look at any additional data that's come in and hopefully, again, get your consensus and then take it to formal board vote on June 23rd.
Are county commissions self-funded? Are they self-funded?
Thomas, do you know? I'm not.
They run a clinic, but are they self-funded?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Ms. Stacy was asking if the county is self-funded.
The county is currently not self-funded, fully insured today, considering the same transition that you all as school district is.
What about City of Ocala?
City of Ocala.
City of Ocala is self-funded, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So, Lori, I have a question. Thomas, for you, as of today, if the projections continue to be favorable, we're looking at a possible recommendation from you that this would be a good idea at this time?
Yes, ma'am, that's 100% correct. I think that the $2.7 million in illustrated savings today, which of course the fluidity of what COVID is, but as Sharon reassured us, actuarially across the country, and the far reduced infection rate that we have as compared to the rest of the country to date is all the more reason for that to be a likely possibility. The only other point I did want to make is in the slide where we showed the fully insured versus self-insured cost, and let me get back to it if I may, just for illustrative purposes. This slide on the screen where you see the fully insured column where the required increase at 1.7%, as Sharon is illustrating, that's just an estimated actuarial assumption based on their formula. That is not a formally introduced Florida Blue renewal yet. So Andy Carroll and his team, we're getting closer to that, and of course as we work through as many months as possible, that number will be different than 1.7% likely. However, wanted to point that to your attention to at least illustrate preliminarily a spread as that 5.5% of savings compared to fully insured is illustrated there. So Mrs. McCall, I would offer at this time the recommendation will continue for Marion County Public Schools to consider self-funding as you're having a well-performing claims year. And even with COVID-19, we expect that to, as Sharon mentioned, go even a further decrease in overall claim spend at this point.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to give you an annual update on the Employee Wellness Program. The first slide that you'll see is just an overview of the initiatives that we offer throughout the year. I was looking back at the information. The wellness assessments have actually been provided to employees of the district since it was piloted in 1996, so almost 25 years ago, that an informal employee wellness program started, and then over the years we have introduced several different initiatives, including the diabetes program and then most recently the weight management program that I will touch on and provide some additional data on later in the program. So we'll address the communication strategies. Like I said, we'll be talking about some featured programs and then how wellness and self-funding can work together to provide some risk management strategies. So important as bringing in new initiatives, communicating those initiatives to over 60 different locations throughout the district is just as important. So some of the things that we do to ensure that the employees know what programs we have available, how they can register for those programs, if they qualify for those programs. Last year, so in fall of 2018, we introduced the bi-weekly email campaign. So every 2 weeks, risk management sends out an email district-wide so that all of the employees have access to the information. It highlights one of the programs or initiatives that we have available either at that time or that's coming up shortly on the calendar. We have found this to be a very effective way to communicate with the employees, as most of them are checking their email at some point during the week. The quarterly newsletter is something that we initiated back in 2009, but we've really worked to amp up that quarterly newsletter. This is something that, again, is emailed district-wide to the employees so they all have access to this. And we also use the wellness website. I'll show you a screenshot in just a minute to feature all of our initiatives as well. Each district location and school has a wellness liaison that I communicate directly with, and they oftentimes use the biweekly email campaign or the quarterly newsletter to post that at their school. Some of them have internal newsletters that they feature wellness initiatives in, or they communicate at their faculty and staff meeting about these initiatives. This is just an example of one of the biweekly emails, so we try to make sure that it's visually appealing, that it doesn't take a lot of time to read through the information, and then we do direct links so that employees that are interested in participating or learning more about the initiative can have a direct way to find out more about the initiative. Just an example of what the wellness newsletter email might look like. Thomas is going to pull up the actual newsletter for me here. So as I mentioned, all of the employees have access to the newsletter via email. And as you can see, it features several different initiatives. We often do a success story, urges people to participate in the programs that we have available. And it's just really a great way to feature what we have coming up in that quarter or remind employees about initiatives that are available. For example, the Employee Assistance Program, something that's available all year round, but we find that a lot of employees are not familiar with it, so we do highlight things like that throughout the year. This is a screenshot from the wellness website. You can see wellness.com. Over to the left is the navigation bar that we use so employees can find out about the initiatives that we offer at any point throughout the year by visiting the wellness website. One of the programs that was most recently introduced, we started advertising for the program in the last quarter of 2017. Was the Prediabetes Weight Management Program. This is something that Florida Blue offers as part of their benefit package. It's a 12-month program. Employees are required to qualify for the program. You can see the list of requirements there. They actually get points depending on the different categories, and if their point value is high enough, then they would qualify for the program. Normally, if an employee has of the 5 listed there, they would qualify to do the program. They get either online coaching or they can get in-person coaching with Weight Watchers, which is actually proven to be the most beneficial program, as well as the one that the employees enjoy utilizing the most. So this next slide does have a lot of numbers, but I just wanted to kind of give you an update on where we stand with that program. So since the fall of 28 March of 2020, we've had qualified to participate in the program. Of those employees, we've had just over 1,100 actually enroll, which means they've either gone to a Weight Watchers meeting or they have signed up to do one of the online programs. Of that, almost 800 participated at least 2 times in the first month, 600 engaged at least 4 times in the first 2 months, and then 300 have lost at least 5% of their weight, and 138, 10%. Just to keep in mind, these numbers are fluid, so if somebody enrolled in the program just in January of this year, they would be included in some of those numbers, but obviously we wouldn't anticipate that they've lost 5% or 10% of their weight in the first 2 months of being in the program. They do receive a Fitbit as part of this program, and so they are asked to track physical activity. That's part of the requirement for continuing to stay active in the program, and the participants are averaging 150 weeks of physical, or 150 minutes per week of physical activity, which is the recommendation from the CDC.
Laura, this is Beth. Is the Weight Watchers program free to them as long as they are enrolled in the program, or do they have to pay?
That is correct. It is free. As long as they continue to attend a meeting twice a month, they would be considered an active participant, and then they can get Weight Watchers free for an entire 12 months.
Excellent. Even the meals, or they have to pay for those separate?
If they were to purchase any food, that would be part of their budget, okay. But attending the meetings, and Weight Watchers is a monthly cost of around $40.
Okay, thank you.
This is just a couple of pictures of employees that we featured in our success stories over the last year. Like I said, the Weight Watchers program has proven to be the most successful and the one that the employees like to participate in most. And these successful stories really do drive a lot of our participation in that program. I know that Ms. Thrower has provided data on the mammography events, but I did want to provide kind of some comprehensive numbers. We have had 2 mammography events, one in October and in February. Radiology Associates of Ocala provides the actual imaging services. We have a certified bra fitter that attends, and she actually has been providing a free bra to all of the ladies that attended the event. And then we have partnered with Marion Technical College with the facial and nail specialty program, and they provide free beauty services to the ladies, which is really, really enjoyed. We, over the 2 sessions, did 81 mammograms. I would like to say that in addition to those 81 mammograms, the advertising for the program actually yielded more employees getting their mammograms. They just didn't attend the event. They scheduled at an alternative time. So at the session, 81 mammograms, but we did get an additional employees to schedule and participate in their annual screening. 15 of those 81 had never had a 3D mammogram. Radiology Associates of Ocala is the only local provider that provides 3D mammograms. They would consider that the gold standard of mammography, and so we believe that while those 15 employees were having annual mammograms, are potentially getting a better mammogram because they are now receiving 3D mammograms. 45% of the 81 had not had a mammogram in the last 2 years, and of that number, 24% had not had a mammogram in over 10 years. Wow. So we really are seeing that the Saturday events are providing services that employees were not taking advantage of before. It was really filling a need. We did have a third event scheduled for May 16th. It is most likely that we will be required to cancel that event due to public health concern, but we will consider holding something in the summer if the pandemic allows, and if not, we will reschedule again for this fall. And lastly, I just wanted to touch on how wellness and self-funding can work together. I think that it's crucial to remember that wellness is important for risk avoidance. Oftentimes, however, we look at the most critical risk, though, and that's what we tackle first. Unfortunately, that can get very costly. When you look at wellness programs, for every dollar that you spend keeping a healthy person and healthy, you will spend 3 times that trying to get an unhealthy person to fall into the healthy category. So I think that it is vital that we continue to have wellness initiatives that target keeping healthy people healthy. And then when we look at risk stratification, what can we do to get some of the high-risk people to migrate to lower risk? The Florida Blue categorizes risk in 3 different categories. If they have 2 or less risk factors, they would be considered low risk, 3 to 4 moderate risk, of 4 high risk. So really the goal is to try and migrate or move some of those high risk employees into moderate risk, move some of the moderate risk employees into low risk, and then ultimately keep the low risk employees in that 2 or less risk factor category. And as we look at future initiatives, Thomas spoke to this briefly, but going self-funded actually provides additional data that can really help us target wellness initiatives. We will have more data than we ever have before, really pinpointing where the risk lies, who has the risk, and then what we can do to enhance the programs to meet the needs. Are there any additional questions about the wellness initiatives?
So basically, I feel that we are on target by the time we get to the May 21st meeting. You'll have seen consistently several months of claims experience and have seen the analysis from an actuarial standpoint that should give you some comfort level to be able to make the decision that you believe is the best decision for the district moving forward. Is there any questions about where we go next?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lively. Any public comment? There being none, Mr. Hurley.
Those of you on the phone bridge, you may hang up and leave the meeting. Thank you.
Long-range planning.
Good morning. Chair Cummings.
Good morning.
Vice Chair Thrower. Looking around, getting oriented here. Board members, Dr. Mayer, Mrs. Martinez Lopez, and Acting Board Attorney Green. Ordinarily, this time of year, I would show up here and present historical enrollment trends and capacity utilization to you. But today, in the interest of time efficiency, particularly on the agenda, given the timeliness of it, the sensitivity, the only item I have is related to the land swap that we've been working on for a while. And so it's a declaration of covenants and restrictions, which is part of the overall land swap process. And so it's going to look like this on the front cover, and I'll get to that in just a couple of moments. I'd like to present my information today in 2 steps. One, I just want to read from some prepared comments that I made so I ensure that I get through everything, and I think that would be my quickest way to go through it. I'll provide an overview of the land swap process and where we are in it, and I think that should take me about 2 to 3 minutes, and then after that I'd like to move on to looking at the document. I'll just orient you to the document and make a couple of comments on that, and then if you have any questions, we'll take it from there, if that's acceptable. So, okay. So in terms of a recap or an overview of this land swap process, we've been working on this three-party, two-part land swap for 3 years now. And we're very close to wrapping it up or closing on the two different contracts that there are. As for who's involved, and I wanted to mention this, I know that you've been at various stages of information on this as we've gone along, but some of the names have changed in either the contract or the agreement. So as for who's involved, the parties are World Equestrian, Cradle Limited Liability Corporation, and the school board. When I say World Equestrian now, that's a variation or another corporation that's Mr. Roberts or Golden Ocala or World Equestrian. We actually saw RL Carriers as well. So that's one party. Cradle would be Mr. Melnick, or Winding Oaks, the subdivision, and the old horse farm that's still partially functioning. And then, of course, yourselves. So how does the process happen? So there are two contracts. One is a purchase and sale agreement, and that one is between World Equestrian and Cradle. And so that's a cash deal where World Equestrian is buying the 20 acres down off of 200 that the board is eventually interested in. The second one is the World Equestrian deal with the school board. And as I mentioned, that started off as RL Carriers and has transitioned. And that's just an exchange. So the sequence on that is that World Equestrian will buy that from Cradle in a cash deal first. And then after they own that land, then they will trade it to the school board for the property that the school board currently owns now on Northwest 80th Avenue. And that's in the midst of their overall large development. The reason I'm kind of dragging you through all of this is because the document that we're looking at today is part of the purchase and sale agreement that's World Equestrian and Cradle. And there might be good reason to ask, well, then why is that important to the school board? What happens is that in that agreement, the successors and assigns to that purchase and sale, being the school board eventually, you wind up living with whatever's agreed to in that document. So I'd like to tell you what's going on currently is that all parties have been working in good faith together to bring this deal to a conclusion. And currently, we've got this declaration of covenants and restrictions because being part of that purchase and sale agreement, Cradle is requiring it. And ultimately, it's a development, it's a mixed-use development. And they're just wanting to protect their investment to ensure that going forward, the property values are protected as well. So, Greenspoon Martyr, Attorney Lennox and I have been working and all the way along keeping Mrs. Green informed of this, that there were some parts of it that were just not in the best interest of the board. So we've been working on that. We've got some notable changes that we've just submitted as recently as yesterday morning, and we got, as recently as yesterday afternoon, some very positive feedback from Cradle's attorney indicating that thinks we've got a pretty workable proposal there. So our next steps, and this is an important part to me, I think to you, and this is my ask for the day. I want to ask you now for consensus that with the understanding that working along with Attorney Lennox, that we are pursuing these changes to the draft that you're going to see today. So you're seeing a draft. It's got some initially proposed language in it. Things are happening quickly. We've given more feedback to them, and we're asking for further changes. Those changes they've already seen and are saying that they think that's something that's workable. And so with that understanding, then I'm hoping that your consensus would be we can just bring this on an agenda in the near future to bring all of the deals closer to a closing. And on that future agenda, which hopefully can be during May, probably at this point, I think it will probably be the second agenda in May. You will also see a contract extension for the contract that World Equestrian and the board have, which is the exchange, and then a resolution, a board resolution regarding mineral rights. It happens at any time, and you've seen at least one of these somewhat recently. The board just gets that statutorily. Whenever the board owns something, then it acquires the mineral rights and necessarily has to do a resolution to turn them over or release them to any subsequent owners of the property. So that completes my overview, and if there are no questions, then I'll move on to the document itself. I wanted to ask you to turn to the last couple of pages of the document. You'll see the map, which just gives you an overview, an aerial, and with the parcel, the 20-acre parcel outlined in red. I thought that this was worth giving you some sort of context to have a feeling for what all we're looking at and how this would relate. If you were to read through this document, you would find that there are two parcels referred to, a cradle parcel and an equestrian parcel. When you see the equestrian parcel referenced in it, think school board eventually, because currently it's contemplating the deal that initially happens between World Equestrian and Cradle, where World Equestrian first gets the piece of property that they will then trade to the school district, to the school board. So there's also I would say to the top right corner, and then to the top right corner, and then kind of the bottom middle, there are areas in the document that are referred to as having, in the future, part of this mixed-use development. They would have, I contemplate convenience stores, maybe restaurants or something like that, that may sell tobacco products or wine and beer, I guess, and maybe restaurants would have alcohol. So the body of this at this time says there would be at least a 1,000-foot separation between the school property and those uses. And in agreeing to these terms, it would say that the school board ultimately would accept that, those are acceptable uses at those locations. If you would flip over, yes.
Is there a structure on that?
Yes, sir. There is. There's a horse barn on there currently. Yep. So you're on the second page. And so that would just be if we could make some use of it at some point in time, or otherwise it would just be demolished as part of the construction, the eventual development. But so that's, I would say, this page. And then for orientation on the following page is the survey. And if you turn your survey this way, landscape, you would see a north arrow pointing up. And along the bottom side of the property is the new Southwest 49th Avenue. And I haven't been out there recently, but I know it was pretty close to having been built right up to this property, maybe 2 months ago. That starts out down at the intersection of 95th, actually further south, but you can pick it up down near Liberty Middle and Hammett Bowen and travel northward on it, and brings you up to this property. So I just really wanted to try and give you a better image of what the property is that you're getting and that. So we're good. Any questions along the way, or okay? I can.
We trust you, Mr. Lennox, Ms. Green, on making sure that it's all right.
Okay. And before I begin to do this, I'll give you the out or the option of just, if you want to call it quits at any moment. I would say I've done a little bit of red highlighting in here, things that we clearly asked to be deleted. Any greens would be additions, and then the yellow, I've got some comments to make on those sections. But at this point, the feedback we're getting from the attorney and what we've proposed is that so long as the board owns the property and builds the contemplated educational use, which would be an elementary or a K-8 school, then the board would not be subject to the master declarations or covenants and restrictions, and it would not be subject to a homeowners association. The caveat or important point there is if the board decides, well, this is not someplace that we want to build a school or we can't or what, at least at this point, it would seem like you wouldn't be able to just go and say, we want to make this some sort of an administrative facility or that. If that were to happen, we'd probably have to open this up and try and renegotiate it or be subject to the homeowners association. So I think that's kind of the shortcut to addressing, whatever the items are in here. So I would just quickly go through and say on the front page, under the recitals, contemplated educational use, we've asked that that be defined because it seems to be important to the ongoing approach. On page 3 of 12, item 2.8, Winding Oaks Plan Development. This section currently, it protects Winding Oaks, as I mentioned, because they're a mixed-use development. And what staff and Attorney Lennox have proposed is that we effectively exempt the board from the homeownership, the homeowners association, and any of the restrictive covenants. Below that, at the bottom of the page, section 4.1 is PD approvals. PD is a planned development. That's something that would happen through the city. And so the city's going to see this and have some say in it from a standpoint of telling the developer about the uses that they're discussing in this as well, the tobacco products and the alcoholic beverages. And so we are proposing language that would say 1,000 feet of separation between those uses and the school parcel, or whatever the city's code requires. And on page 4 of 12, number 5, there was what was identified as a buffer easement. We've asked for deletion of the easement and calling it actually development buffers. This was skewed in the direction, or the language that's here, in my opinion, skews it in the direction of treating schools like they're more intensive than residential development. Perhaps to some degree they are, but in state legislation and local comp plans, schools are considered to be a compatible use with residential development. So what we're asking for is that there's just mutual buffering, acknowledging that we can not have the whole burden on ourselves. And then finally, in this section, we offer or propose that any development of the site will be governed by what we already have to do, which is Florida Building Code, state requirements for educational facilities. So it's really giving them a framework that they can rely on and something that they can know and refer to, that development of our sites will occur in a particular way. And then it doesn't obligate us to anything more than we would do otherwise. And I think that's it. I might have one more. There was one back here. It's more what I would call the legal portion of it. On page 7 of 12, it's item 8.9, and it says not a public dedication. And Mr. Lennox had just picked up on that, saying that in fact this is when it comes to the school board, it will be a public property. So that was just irrelevant, and so we've asked for that to be deleted. And that is it for me. So
Say, go ye forward.
Wow, this has taken a long time.
It has, but, I mean,
Yeah.
that middle school site was at least 5 years in the shores, and, I mean, a cash deal, I can see that the two parties, Winding Oaks, Cradle, and World Equestrian, when they do it, and I've probably said this to y'all before, is, when you've got a private deal, if you've got money and you've got land, you can close it as quickly as you can, but then we have all of the steps that we need to go through, and then this has been complicated because we started off with the property up there on Northwest 80th having been purchased with impact fees, and so the trade was the best way to do that without winding up with yet another situation to deal with regarding returning impact fees or refunding impact fees. So we'll get it. We're very close.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any public comment? There being none? Comprehensive Mental Health Plan, Ms. Amanda Stegman.
Good morning, Reverend Cummings, board members, Dr. Mayer, Attorney Green, and Mrs. Martinez Lopez. I am before you today to discuss the state-mandated mental health plan, which was enacted shortly after the tragedy at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, February of 2018. It was enacted in 2018 and updated in 2019. After the closure of this legislative session, there were no updates for this upcoming school year. The objectives for today are to review our progress towards the 2019-2020 mental health plan, but also give you our proposal for the next school year, 2020-2021 mental health plan. So as I review my presentation today, if you could refer to the proposed mental health plan in your packets. As we developed our goals, we did have 4 guiding principles, and that's really to maintain a plan that can be sustainable. One that we're looking at resources that we already have available, but also building on that plan from year to year to ensure consistency. We do cover a continuum of services, so we're looking at, when we talk about a continuum of services, looking at that multi-tiered system of support. Tier 1, looking at prevention, Tier 2, early intervention, and then Tier 3, our most intensive supports for our students. And then hopefully we will get to recovery where we can move them back down to that Tier 1 level of support. We're responsive to students and families, so we want to address student concerns as quickly as possible, especially if a student is in crisis. And then collaborative in nature, so including internal and external stakeholders, so looking at not only groups of staff within Marion County Public Schools, but also within the community. I'm on slide 5. Thank you. These are our goals for the Comprehensive School Mental Health Plan for the upcoming school year. These goals have not changed. Again, we're trying to build on what we've already created so we can continue to make progress. Goal number 1, we want to improve access to school-based mental health supports by ensuring schools are staffed appropriately with trained mental health providers. And I know that we've discussed this before with the board. A good portion of our budget is geared towards providing additional staff for our mental health providers in our schools. So the ratios that you see up there are based on the staff that we're able to add through the mental health plan. So looking at school counselors, we've added in the past 2 additional school counselors, 4 additional school psychologists, and 3 additional school social workers. A part of this goal, of course, we want to know which students we need to target for mental health support. We utilize what's called the BEST screener. That is a behavior observation screener that teachers at the elementary level would be able to complete, and then at the secondary level, our students complete. And this is an example of our elementary best screener from this past school year, and you can see where we're able to identify students in the red there, extremely elevated risk. Our multidisciplinary teams at each school look at their data and determine which students that they need to target for further intervention for mental health. This is an example of our referral form for the multidisciplinary teams. So in order to discuss a student at each routine meeting, they need two things. They need to have a best screening result, but they also need to have a completed referral form. And the reason why we're requiring the data to be there is because we can only make good decisions if we have good data in front of us. Goal number 2, integrate a continuum of mental health supports within a multi-tiered system of supports. So I touched on it earlier. We're looking at every tier. So again, tier 1, prevention, tier 2, early intervention, and tier 3, the highest level of individualized support that we can provide to our students. Reviewing tier 1 implementation from this past school year, we implemented Sanford Harmony at every elementary school. And one of the benefits that our teachers and staff took away from the school year was that we were able to embed those Sanford Harmony curriculum lessons into our 2019-2020 social studies curriculum maps. So that provided a little bit more resources and ease of use for our teachers when it came to classroom implementation. We did train all mental health personnel prior to school starting on July 22nd. And then from there, the school counselors at each school were responsible for training school staff. To recognize teachers who were implementing Sanford Harmony well, we had a monthly newsletter that we recognized those teachers as Sanford Harmony Classrooms of the Month throughout the school year. For secondary schools, we enacted Save Promise clubs. SAVE stands for Students Against Violence Everywhere, and really they're responsible for implementing activities, school-wide activities that promote social inclusiveness. Club sponsors were provided with a supplement from the mental health plan to plan, support, and implement those club activities at every school. And we're looking at expanding those clubs to the high school level for next school year. For Tier 2 support, so again, Tier 2 is that early intervention. We do have a list of district-supported interventions, and if you refer to the mental health plan that you all have in front of you, you can refer to Appendix B or page 13 to view what that chart looks like. And schools are able to pull from this chart when they're meeting as a multidisciplinary team to determine which intervention they can put in place for a student based on the data that's in front of them. School teams were trained as multidisciplinary teams at the beginning of the school year. And then we also trained the teams on these district-supported interventions throughout the year. So when they had their monthly meetings for school counselors, deans, psychologists, social workers, they all received PD on these interventions. And from this past school year, school-based multidisciplinary teams recommended 699 students to school-based mental health services. So I'm excited about that number because that tells me before this was put in place, we didn't have any students that were being recommended for intervention for mental health. So that's an exciting number to me that we're able to help and assist that number of students. Tier 3, which is our highest level of mental health support for students, we were able to provide 319 students with IEP counseling with our school social workers. And a part of this plan that we're proposing for the upcoming school year, we're looking at adding 2 more social workers to the plan. Like we said before, we think staff can make the biggest impact for our kids. It doesn't do very well to identify a problem if we don't have the staff to be able to address it. So we're looking at additional social workers to look at Tier 2, Tier 3 supports for our students for next school year. When a multidisciplinary team meets, they can also refer a student on to a community mental health referral. So meaning really what the student requires is above and beyond the scope of what the school system would be able to provide, so they're recommending outside therapeutic services. So as of today, there were 212 students that were referred on to community-based mental health services. We also included the diversion programs. 72 students did complete the drug and alcohol diversion program this past school year, and 28 students completed the clean slate programs, and those are also ran by our school social workers.
How do you feel it's going as far as repeat offenders, or what are you hearing back from the parents? Maybe parents call and say it was good or it was bad, or what's your feedback?
I don't have direct feedback on that. That would come from the school social work department, and I know David is waiting in the wings. I don't know if he may be able to come in and speak to that, but.
I guess it would be good to know, because I think feedback with parents also, you know, because they're in the home with these children.
Right.
And if they were acting out at school, they've probably been acting out at home also. And it would be interesting to see how has it helped the family dynamics for these students to go through this. I think that would be something I would be interested in.
Right. Do you want to speak to?
Generally, our feedback has been good. It's mainly anecdotal feedback, but the parents generally are appreciative. Some of them get a little irritated with us that they have to attend for a couple meetings, but we do feel like anytime a child essentially is using drugs or alcohol, that the family needs to be involved in and understand the ramifications of that. That being said, when I do a presentation on the code of conduct, and I think at the next work session, I'll provide you some data on some of our students who are reoffending, because those, our biggest number of expulsions are on drug offenses, and typically those are students who have reoffended.
After going through the drug program?
Mhm.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
It would be interesting, though, just to do like a family survey or parent survey or something after the kids, maybe after a couple of months after they're out of the program. I mean, we can't force them to turn it in, but to see if they would just volunteer some information about how effective it was, or what they've heard maybe the kids say about it.
Okay.
To help give feedback, because in the home, they might hear the brother telling the sister how great it was or how dumb it was or something, so to help us improve it.
Is there any type of, exit survey or something?
We do have them do an essay where they talk about some of the things they've learned, and I could gather some of those up, redact names and provide those to you just to give you some idea of some of the stuff that students are saying.
After a couple of months, because there's not that many, there's 72 and 28 in the other, for the social workers to just make a family contact and ask them to fill something out and just give us some help, like what could we have done different, or what part worked, or what have you heard your students say about it, because that would give us some insight as to how on target we are.
Yeah, how long is
I
the
think it's a
diversion
good idea.
program? How long is the diversion program?
The diversion program, basically, we've structured it where it lasts essentially 9 weeks. We gear it towards each 9-week period. It was a rotating or rolling group, but we found that it was much more effective to have a cohort come in each 9 weeks. And that way they work together. The kids actually bond a little bit. They bond with the instructor, and it makes a much nicer format.
Are these programs still taking place with coaches?
Not at this time. We just did not have a good way of structuring it and providing the service. So we're just going to resume when we can get back to face-to-face meetings.
And I think in the schools where it was talking about how the students, the secondary level, how the students kind of get together to include the program that you're using to help students, because boy, that's the first thing. I mean, kids would know first, like, who is isolating themselves from this, because that's a dead target as to where our problem are, the child that's just withdrawn.
Right, and that's what we've learned is peers always know first.
Yeah.
Us as adults, we always kind of learn after the fact if some type of crisis or tragedy takes place, but the peers know. So,
The adults just kind of think that's just the angel child.
Right.
You know, where really it's a very disturbed child, and the kids know it.
right, absolutely. And we've learned that what research has shown is if youth feel included, that they feel like they have connections with others, that they'll be less likely to engage in violent behavior.
They talk.
Right, right. All right, so moving on to the next slide. Goal number 3, provide relevant and ongoing mental health professional development for all school employees. So the multidisciplinary teams, the school-based teams, those are really the core, the structure, the framework that we rely on in order for all of these other components of the mental health plan to take place. It's very important. So prior to the beginning of the school year, we did a whole group training with all of our team members. But then as we got into the school year, for the first semester, our district team went out and visited every school and sat down and had a meeting with those school-based teams to make sure that they understood the framework, and then also we could answer any questions right there on the spot in regards to their role. We also have the youth mental health first aid training, which is mandatory part of the act. And we did train an additional 17 youth mental health first aid facilitators this past school year. We were pacing at a great rate prior to COVID. So right now we're sitting at 35% complete. And between the months of January to March, we were actually able to train over 1,000 employees within that 3-month period. So I feel like if we weren't interrupted by COVID, that we probably would have continued down that same path, tracking fairly high for our rate for completion there. But just so you all know, we have been contacted by the state and we're looking into a virtual option. So we're hoping to get that up off the ground here shortly, so we can move forward with that required training. And then, as you heard before, BEST, that's the instrument that we are utilizing to screen students to determine whether or not we need to put interventions in place for those students. So, of course, we would need to train school staff and multidisciplinary team members on that specific instrument. So we did implement that training for all of those team members, counselors, psychologists, social workers, and student services managers. And at the elementary level, we were able to screen twice this year, both in the fall and in the spring. Goal number 4, to collaborate with community agencies to ensure students and families have access to wraparound services. So we meet once a month with a group of community agencies. We actually just met yesterday via phone. And this is just a great opportunity for us to collaborate, to hear from one another the services that we're able to provide students, and also talk through some barriers that we've seen. And just another great opportunity for us to collaborate with one another. We also currently hold contracts with the centers and PACE to provide counseling services on school campuses for our youth. So these are students that were identified as high need by our multidisciplinary teams, and then they're referred on to those specific counselors from those agencies. Lastly, goal number 5 is to provide relevant and ongoing mental health information and resources to parents. So once a student is identified as needing further intervention, a letter is sent home to the parent notifying them that they've been identified for need for that support, and they're provided with information about the mental health plan and how we got to this point. We have participated in school-based parent nights, and so we'll set up tables, have the opportunity to speak to parents about what the mental health plan actually is and the support we're giving to students. And then finally, we made a mental health, I don't know if you all had the opportunity to see it on our Marion County Public Schools webpage. We do now have a mental health plan website. So on that website, we do have a lot of information for families, for students. They have an opportunity now with COVID to request school counseling services. We also, with the help of our school counselors, were able to push out videoed social emotional learning lessons for our students, and then also give them the resources for community-based mental health services at this time. And just so you know, before I move on, the budget that you see before you within the plan, that budget is based on last year's allocation. We have not, the governor has not signed the allocation for this upcoming school year, so we cannot include it in our proposed budget right now. But once it is signed and it's updated, then we'll come back in front of you and discuss how we're going to make changes to the budget. But just so you know, we would probably look at adding more money, more dollars to professional development and staff. That's where we see we get the biggest benefit for our plan. Any questions?
I have one. Good presentation, thank you. My question is about the curriculum that we're using for our secondary students, and I believe there was a half day where I have not heard real positive feedback from teachers or from parents about that curriculum and how it was taught. So I really think we need to look at how we're doing that and make some significant changes.
Right, and those rules are actually separate from the mental health plan from this specific act. We did implement based on what was recommended by school administrators, looking at those 2 half-days. And reflecting back on the implementation, we do realize that's a lot in 2 days to meet the hour requirement. And so we did use EverFi curriculum. That's they already had the information ready to go because it was such a quick turnaround. But what we did is we sought feedback from schools. So we have all of that information, all of the feedback from schools.
It was not well received.
Yes, we know. And it was truly hit or miss. We did have some schools that implemented really well, and we got some positive feedback from schools. And then there's other schools that didn't put a lot of, I hate to say effort into it, but it just wasn't as rolled out as well as other schools had done it. So the feedback really was dependent on that as well. But we're taking that and we're learning from it, and we're going to make some adjustments for next school year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, great presentation, and again, that speaks to the importance of bolstering the number of trained professionals that really connect in a school setting.
Right.
And that are there on a daily basis to support the schools and each school population. I mean, these numbers are just continue to be the ratios. I mean, 1 to 250 school counselors, and we're at 1 in 510, you know.
Yeah.
School psychologists, you know, way over, and school psychologists are the ones that are doing the testing. And so if you have, the recommended ratio is 1 to 750, we have 1 to 1,738. What are school psychologists going to be spending their time doing? Testing. You know, they're not going to be able to do anything else other than what is absolutely required.
Right.
So I 100% agree with, it's all about getting the right people at the right schools consistently.
Absolutely. And one thing I did forget to mention, you'll see on the budget, there is an incentive to provide a supplement to licensed school social workers. And the reason why we included that in the budget for this upcoming year is because we need to be competitive with the private market, and we need to retain these folks because they're able to provide a higher level of support and expertise to students that need the most intensive support.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was also glad to see that Sanford Harmony is being implemented across all of the elementary schools because we have a lot of mobility. And so when students leave, they're being exposed to the same curriculum, and that it's embedded in the curriculum maps for social studies, so the teachers don't, again, you know, one more thing on their plate. You know, we all want to avoid a tragedy, but somebody's got to do the lift. So that was brilliant.
And sometimes you have to look at these national averages and stuff. You know, sometimes the truth is somewhere in the middle because the people making the national averages are usually the people in the industry making, it's kind of a jobs like push my jobs type thing. So sometimes it's not really what that says because that was
often put together by people in that profession, so.
Right, those recommended ratios came from the national councils, from school counseling, psychologists, and
Exactly.
social workers,
So
so that's
they-
where
they
those
need
numbers
jobs.
are.
So you got,
They also
sometimes
want to
it's,
save lives, I would
well,
think.
sometimes it's somewhere in the middle of what the national recommendation is. It's not necessarily right there.
And that is a huge gap, so we're, I guess, don't have to worry about that for a while. 1 to 250, 1 to 2,000.
Right.
We still have some room.
Absolutely, we have some room, and we don't want to be put in the position where we've identified a student with a need and not be able to provide the support that he or she needs.
Yeah.
That leads me into of COVID-19. This is a great plan when school is in session. I am curious what, and this year I know we're learning, and that was a perfect example of what Beth brought up, and you did a great job explaining, look, we learned and we're going to be better from it. I'm curious, and you don't have to give me an answer now, but I hope, and I'm pretty sure you are, like, how are you planning for next school year if COVID is still around? And how are we going to do a better job and a good job, like, you know, with our IEPs and our ESE and ELL and, you know, all of that. So I don't need an answer now, but I would like to know.
Well, the truth
later.
is, we've already started because we're here, we're in COVID. So we needed to find a way to continue to meet the needs of the students, because the reality is they're home and there's probably a lot more stressors going on at home right now. So we needed to support those students still. So all of the multidisciplinary teams met right off the bat to go over their lists of students. They looked at every student that was currently in an intervention. They looked at any student that had a previous suicide assessment, a threat assessment, and they made contact with every one of those kids. And they came up with a plan for every one of those kids. So we're providing that support through telehealth. We're doing it through Zoom, through Microsoft Teams, and really making sure that those students are getting what they need. Even if they were receiving outside counseling support, we still make contact to find out, was that occurring? Were they getting the services that they need via telehealth through those outside agencies? So I feel like we're making good progress towards that, and we can only build and improve on the systems that we currently have in place.
That's why I was just making sure we're thinking ahead to even be better. So
Yes,
we're not
absolutely.
scrambling and have like, well, this kind of worked. Like, I think it's really a good idea to have a good, solid plan if we can, and know what we've learned from this, and not have to have a gap of trying to figure out what we need to do.
I am a planner. If anyone knows me, I am a planner. So I'm not a fly by the seat of my pants type of person. We do definitely, we seek input from our stakeholders on implementation, and then we always improve on our current plan. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Steckman, on the conference call yesterday, and this dovetails with what Ms. King was saying about increased stressors at home, and you were saying that too, because I think I heard a number of 438 kids or something that had gone through, but now are being brought back into care.
Right, and that was referring to what's called CAT at the centers. CAT is their highest level of service that's provided at the centers. It's a full wraparound care program, and so what they're seeing is a high number of what they call recidivism. I'm not going to say it right, but and the reason being is because they provide that intensive support and care at that moment. But then once those supports are taken away, all of a sudden, we're starting to see those kids again. So what we do in the school system, of course, is look at what supports we can provide to help support those kids so they're not getting back to that point where they have to have that level of care through CAT.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Anything
other
else?
questions? Any public comment? Thank you, Ms. Steck.
All right, thank you.
Evergreen College Park rezoning update. Ms. Melissa Keinert and Mr. Ben Whitehouse, area directors.
Let me grab a clicker just real quick.
There's only one slide, right?
Yes, it's two.
Two slides.
Thank you.
Greetings, Reverend Chair, board members, Dr. Mayor. Let me be the first to wish you all a good afternoon as we shift into the end, hopefully, of this session, and what we hope to be a very brief update on College Park and Evergreen. As you know, the board approved in March a zoning change for those two schools to shift students that lived closer to College Park, the ability to move to that school. And so we want to give you an update on where we're at. So these are the current numbers where we sit for the 1920 school year for both schools, and then our projected numbers for next school year based on that zoning change, and also considering what our potential kindergarten enrollment may be like for next year as well. So what we've done already in working with Ms. Dobbins, we have made instructional shifts, so the teaching units have already been shifted between Evergreen and College Park to make account for the need for increased enrollment at that school and increased teachers, and obviously a decline in enrollment at Evergreen would result in fewer teachers. So those shifts have already taken place. Ms. Forsythe at College Park will have an opportunity starting next week to start hiring for some of those vacant units that she now has on her campus. So what we need from you right now is just a little guidance, because we have two needs that are still outstanding that we have to make a decision on. In conversation with Ms. Forsythe, we believe that we need to provide some additional support services at College Park. One, based on the numbers, as they will be now at roughly 800 students, which is a very large elementary school for Marion County, but also to make sure that we provide a very smooth transition for those students coming over from Evergreen, that we have some dedicated staff members that can really work with those students and make sure that they have a very successful opportunity to transition into College Park next school year. The challenge that we have is that when we built our school level staffing plans, we built based on current needs, and we don't overguess on support staff. We may a little bit on teachers based on projections, but we provide exactly what is needed for the support staff. So College Park currently on their staffing plan has one school counselor and one student service manager. We don't have very many elementary schools that have more than one, just because we don't have very large elementary schools at this time to justify that need. So in looking at our schools, Ms. Kyer and I went through the school staffing plans to see where we had additional counselors and deans that we could move from smaller schools, and the only options we have, Evergreen has 2 student services managers currently on their campus, and obviously their numbers are going to be dropping down to close to 300, and Oakcrest has 2 school counselors. So obviously our desire is not to move support staff from 2 of our neediest schools over to College Park. However, if we do not, the next step would be that we would have to go back and do an amendment, which would require the board to approve amending the current staffing plan for next school year to add an additional school counselor and student service manager at the school level. So we will open it up for questions and take your direction.
I'm concerned that we don't know what our budget's going to look like yet, and if we have to move them, the desire would be to have new over there, but I think we have to be very fiscally cognizant of what might happen, not just this year, but I think this is going to be a fallout for 2 to 3 years to come. So I'm not sure what we need to do right now.
And under normal circumstances, I would agree that that's a great plan. I think right now, you're seeing a board that we need to be fiscally conservative, and with a lot of unknown even going into next year, is there a way to, until we know, because can they split like the service manager, you said at Oakcrest? There was 2.
So there's 2 student service managers currently at Evergreen, and then 2 counselors at Oakcrest right
Okay, so there's going to be less at Evergreen, so you can move those. So you really don't need these then? You just want the amendment to move them, or I'm confused?
So what we could do is we could move the student service manager unit from Evergreen over to College Park. Their numbers are going to be very small next year, so
Yeah.
so that makes sense to make that shift over to provide that support. The school counselor we're a little iffier on, and I can certainly let Ms. Kiner
How many
speak
students
to.
at Oakcrest?
So just to back up to speak to the second student service manager at Evergreen, I have spoken to Ms. Kemp, because of course she knows her school the best, as well as Ms. Elsperman has been in on this conversation as well. And we do feel comfortable with the fact that we are keeping the leadership team, everyone else the same. There are 2 assistant principals at that school. It is Tier 3. However, they are being reduced to approximately 322 students, knowing that kindergartners are your wild card, not knowing exactly how many of those we'll expect. But we do feel comfortable if we need to shift that second student service manager over to College Park, because again, we know that they need the support with the addition of 78 students from Evergreen.
That may be a good idea to shift that one from Evergreen, seeing that they're familiar with those students that are coming from Evergreen, and it provides a little bit of continuity of them going over there.
And I would be remiss if I didn't say, now that you brought that up, that it wouldn't necessarily be that actual person that would go contractually. Right, it would be the unit that would shift, yes, sir.
So I think we're okay just doing that, but we are open to revisit later when we know more information. We just don't have enough.
Absolutely. And Oakcrest, I would hesitate to, as Mr. Whitehouse indicated, I do believe that because the numbers are staying consistent at Oakcrest, that we have 500 students there. We do utilize those 2 counselors at Oakcrest Elementary, being a Tier 3 school. You just heard Ms. Steckman talk about the mental health piece. They are doing the small groups. So I definitely, on Ms. Bayless's behalf, would not be able to, and mine as well, being at the school a lot, be able to say that I would be comfortable saying that they only need 1 counselor right now.
And I think we really need to think hard about this decision and hear from Teresa Boston-Ellis what she thinks is viable in terms of the financial side of it. Because here's the thing, the redistricting has been a long time in coming, and it's really important to support it all the way through. And the success at Oakcrest and Evergreen and their recovery has been a long time in coming. And when I look at the current numbers of this year, this is just from the external operators report that we're supposed to be meeting on soon, in 3 kindergarten classrooms, 24 students. And these kids are coming in needy.
Right.
And
if they're in the brick and mortar school, I agree 100%, but at this time, and we don't know what the future is, they're not in brick and mortar classrooms, and I'm comfortable revisiting this when we know what's happening in the future. I mean, because fiscal, I mean, we gotta pay attention to our money now, not after the fact and later. We need to pay attention now. If the students are in there and we need it, I said, let's revisit that. But right now, when we don't know, that's where I stand.
Is it a possibility, just not, and I really hate to make this suggestion, but just knowing what the fiscal constraints could be, is it a possibility to split a guidance counselor? Could one of the guidance counselors at Oakcrest work half at Oakcrest and half at College Park? I really hate to do that.
It's too large. You have 500 something kids.
They are busy.
You figure you have 500 some kids at Oakcrest, 300 something kids at Evergreen. That's still 800 kids. And at College Park, they're going to be at close to 800 kids. So you're going to.
Well, we're going to have to, I think we
seriously.
have to put a school counselor there when we're back in school. I just think we're going to bite the bullet on that.
But we don't know if they are back in school.
I have a feeling by the start of school year, they're going to be back in school. If things keep moving at the rate they're moving, I would be surprised if kids don't go back.
And we want to be prepared for that eventuality and not try to bring someone on, weeks after school has started. Again, we're in the business of serving kids. And if we can't come up with 2 positions out of our total budget to serve schools that have struggled continuously,
Well, at least one position.
Look at what we're sending
yeah, it's
over.
essentially one position.
Look at what we're sending to College Park, though.
Right.
A fourth of that school that's been struggling. College Park is where we are going to be in trouble.
They need support too.
So they're gonna
Yes.
need that
College
support.
Park, because we're sending basically 25% of the long-term troubled situations, whatever it was, from Evergreen. I think we're going to need some help over at College Park.
Of course, because the numbers speak to
That's
that.
If the students are there, I agree. But I'm going to play the devil's advocate a little bit. When there's a position made, you're never undoing that. like, there's not a position that you make and then we're like into it and say, oh, we can't. But we got to look at our dollars. We got to look at the big picture and know where we're going. I mean, like I said, under normal circumstances, I would 100% sure. But like this last quarter, or maybe I need to learn more. I mean, are our guidance counselors in touch with these students and feel like they need, you know, extra help and support? I mean,
We are going to get some extra help at Evergreen that we really weren't planning on getting, because had the school moved up, we wouldn't have had Miss Elsprum in there. So the school's going to have extra hands-on that it wouldn't have had possibly if we'd have gone through the FSA testing, because we probably would have lost her. So now we're going to have her. So the school is going to have some extra support over there that we weren't going to have before.
So I would like to add in as well that, yes, our counselors are doing a lot of individual and group work with our students, reaching out and communicating and making sure that they're okay and that they have the supports they need at home. But I would also like to put out there that when we do return in the fall, whatever that day may be, our students are going to need a lot of social emotional support. And one counselor cannot provide that to 800 students at College Park. And the odds of finding a school counselor in August, September is going to be slim to none. We struggle as it is to find qualified school counselors, but not being able to get them as they're graduating in the spring and the summer and be able to bring them into our school at that time is going to be very difficult late in the game to try and do that and add that.
So I think we're just gonna have to bite this bullet
Are
and
there
do it.
any other units, school counselor units out there that we could pull from?
No, we have very few elementary schools right now with two. Most of them are very large, like Saddlewood, Marion Oaks Elementary. I mean, very large, 800-plus size schools that could not survive without
I
two.
think the most responsible thing for us to do is to go ahead and get that unit there, because you're right. These kids are going to be coming off of weeks of not being in school, summer. Months.
Starting at a new school.
Starting at a new school, and I get what Ms. King is saying.
Me too.
We have to be definitely responsible, but we cannot be that responsible on the backs of these kids.
Talk about a counselor to,
Yes, counsel to College Park.
So move the student services manager if they feel that they can handle that, and then let's add another school
I just
counselor.
think if we're sending 25% of Evergreen's moving out, and we've worked so hard to get those kids up, because otherwise we could find ourselves in a crisis situation, and then that just throws the whole school into turmoil.
Sends us backwards.
And then Evergreen kids are gonna come back with needs as well. And, you know, the buzz in the community is Evergreen is an up-and-coming school. And yes, we may be starting with numbers low, but build it and they will come.
Right.
Whoever comes, can I jump in? It's kind of hard being in the back, and so we can, Jane's out there, we can survive the student service manager move. And John McGowan suggested we can use the mental health dollars to pay for the additional guidance counselor, so we don't have to come out of the general fund with that. So that's kind of a win-win.
Here we go.
So that
Always a way.
should solve it. It's really hard here will that suffice? Okay, so we're gonna move the dean.
So we need to amend the staffing plan for a unit.
There's going to be one addition of a guidance counselor, which is going to come out of mental health plan. We're going to transfer the student service manager from Evergreen to College Park. And then
That particular one, or just the unit?
the unit. You had to follow the union contract.
There was some way that person could go, since she does know the kids.
That would be continuity, I agree.
Yes.
I mean,
We'll look at
I'm
it.
gonna ask y'all to work on that.
Yes, ma'am, we will. We just want to know we can cover that. We'll figure that out.
Thank you. Consensus.
Yay.
That was it?
They're all gone.
All right, any public comment? There been a value adjustment board appointment. I'm making an appointment to, the value adjustment board. That's one of our boards that we have that we make appointments to. I want to thank the, person that was currently serving for District 3, one of our people, which was Mr. William Taylor. We thank him for his service and all that he's done, but we're going to move forward. I'm going to be appointing Dr. Gwendolyn Dawson as my appointment for the Value Adjustment Board. And then I'm also going to ask Ms. Thorold if she's willing to continue on that board.
Enjoyed that.
All right. That is it. Any public comment on that? Okay. Again, Mr. Taylor, thank you for your service to our Value Adjustment Board.
Receiving a letter in the mail.
And, yeah, he should be receiving a letter in the mail, thanking him for his service. as well to the Marion County District. Board concerns, Dr. Mayor?
No, thank you.
Attorney Green? Ms. Elena Montrez?
I have two. I just want to know for the April 30th and the May 5th special board meetings, are we going to be utilizing special duty officers? So I'll need to.
April 30th?
And May 5th?
No.
No?
No.
No, okay, just.
I think if we can have Mr. McFadden here, we'll be good.
Okay, good to know. And then the items that we wanted to discuss on that, as far as grades are concerned that Ms. McCall raised for the April 30th, those will need to be just done under Dr. Mayor's administrative briefing since there isn't
Yes.
sufficient time to do
And
them.
it's part of the COVID-19 update. It
Oh, it's
falls
on.
under that 'cause
Okay.
the grading has changed because of that.
Okay.
That was my thinking, if that works
Yep.
for both of you.
That's it. I'm good.
Ms. McCall?
A couple of things. First of all, I want to thank the community who is definitely stepping up to the plate. Different communities, thank you, Ms. Thrower. Having food drives, I know my dining room table is full already. Look at that.
That's what was raised.
3,600 pounds at Ocala Palms. Thank you.
And $4,190 to
Thank you.
interfaith.
That's fabulous. So thank you. I think we're going to get those pantries filled and we can continue to feed our kids with the backpack program and others in the community. So thank you for that. A couple of things. First of all, I've had some calls from some high school parents on their kids have things in their lockers they need. Is there going to be an opportunity?
Yes.
Okay, so.
Have that next week.
Okay, thank you very much. Another concern, I read and heard a DCF report that abuse and neglect referrals are down. They're not getting the call, and a majority of those phone calls come through our schools because our teachers suspect that there is abuse and neglect. I am very, very concerned about some of our children and the safety. And Dr. Mayor, can you just share with us, how are we reaching out to those most vulnerable, those that we know could be in these very dangerous, unsafe situations? So can you share that?
Well, we did a training for all staff. Our area directors trained principals who then trained their teachers on what would you do and what do you look for child abuse and neglect in this virtual environment.
Okay.
So we've done that, and we've double-checked with principals and all district staff directors, executive directors, to make sure that has been done. Mr. Ellers has been keeping a pulse on our homeless kids. So that is what we've done so far. Is there anything else?
No, I just, it just concerns me, and when we do come back to bricks and mortar, there's a lot of children that are gonna need a lot of things. So I'll be anxious to hear how we're gonna move forward when we talk about the grading and placement test and all of that. I think that we need to be prepared that our children are not going to come back to us the way they left us, many of them. And I'm very concerned about that. I know Kelly sits on the Kid Central board, and probably they're having a lot of conversations about this as well. So thank you, Dr. Mayor, for that, and I just really want us to keep that at the forefront. My grandkids are fine. They're doing all their work. They've got very supportive parents. They're getting up, they're getting dressed, they're doing, but I'm just not, we know that not everybody's in that boat. So thank you. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking about those children. So, thank you. That's all.
Ms. Stacy?
Nothing really. It's just, not just the children, but we have a very close friend here that just the COVID, we hear about it's time to go to work. This particular person was just so devastated because he was losing his business, and I just received information yesterday that he had never had any serious high blood pressure issues or heart issues, but he was so concerned, and he blew an aneurysm. He had a stroke, young, in his 50s. So this is not just affecting children, it's affecting families, and it is time for us to get on to work because we've lost him now, and we've known him for 25 years, and his wife said he worried himself to death over finances. So time to get back to work.
Thank you. Ms. King?
I don't have anything.
Ms. Thrower?
Yes, two things. Interesting that you raised the part about getting back to work, because I have been hearing from some employees, their understanding is that we'll be returning to work on May 4th. And I just wanted to clarify that. Is that something that's being discussed with the unions currently?
Oh, correct. That's correct. And if employees don't feel comfortable, then we have the 10-day FMLA that is available, and so we're working through that process now. And again, that it's fluid, minute by minute, depending on what the governor says, but we're prepared to welcome back those who are ready to work and expected to work, and also those who need that 10 days of FMLA.
Okay, all right, and I was a fan of the hybrid work model anyway, just because every family's circumstance is so unique. And I've also gotten input where there are teachers that are struggling teaching from home because of their unique home situations and would like very much to be able to access their classrooms again and have their stuff and have a place to be able to teach from where they can focus. So it is a balancing act always, and a lot of it will be determined by what the governor recommends too. So there seems to be, folks that are very nervous about returning to school or any kind of environment where there's larger groups of people. And then there are other people that are like, well, let's just put some procedures in place so that we can do it as safely as possible and get back to work. So I would have to say that I'm getting probably even in terms of the different inputs. So that definitely creates an opportunity for us to try to continue to be as flexible as we can. And the fact that our employees have continued to get paid through this has been, oh, what a blessing. What a blessing. So
We'll update you on the plan for parents to get their child's stuff. We'll also update you, and that'll be early next week. So on the plan for teachers to come back in, because we're working on that every day as well.
okay, all right, great. And then the second thing I had, and I'm pretty sure you're all aware now, that the request to discontinue and to return to district control of Evergreen and Oakcrest was denied. And it's concerning because, on March 24th, I passed out the guidance from the state Board of Education that said if we wanted to propose a different turnaround plan, to go ahead and submit it. And that's exactly what happened. And then in this letter, it says that, I'll just read it verbatim, we are proud of the progress noted and outlined in our superintendent's correspondence, which was, an amazing testament to what these schools have accomplished. And then it just goes on to say, however, the department is not granting any requests to exit turnaround schools. Well, if they weren't going to grant any requests, then why did they ask? And this is really frustrating because these schools have worked their hearts out. And the most current data that we have completely validated the request. So I'm not sure if there is a paragraph at the end saying if you have any questions, regarding any of these topics, there's someone to contact. I don't know if there is an appeals process, but I think about Principal Bayless and Principal Kemp, who are the leaders of that school, and have done everything they've been asked to do with their team, and with Jane Elsperman's support, they've been able to get the train on the tracks. And now and Jane is an accomplished principal leader herself. And I think about how is she feeling if she had been denied the same opportunity, if she had turned a school around, and I know she has, but you see my point. Now Principals Bayless and Kemp are not going to get the opportunity, it sounds like, at least right now. And so then that lends me to the question of how are we going to honor their accomplishments, and what is the new paradigm going to look like if we do need to move forward with an external operator next year, and how is it going to look?
Well, as long as they leave us under turnaround, we're gonna have funds.
And the funding part is great, and the flexibility part is great. But you know, when you're a leader and it's yours, you want a chance to fly.
Well, I think it's time for that gradual release of responsibility model to kick in, so she should probably speak directly.
Yeah, Ms. Starr, so Ms. Elstrom and I spoke last Friday, and we understood, and so we've been kind of going back and forth and collaborating on what next year looks like. So when you were the original one that helped us kind of do the contract, she wants to come and just talk to the board, if that's okay. She's been here waiting to speak to you on behalf, because I knew that was coming, and we knew that conversation was coming. So we have been going back and forth on what it looks like for next year, because it will look a whole lot different. If that's okay. Is that okay, Reverend?
Yeah, I got a question before.
Yes, sir.
Or they ask, is there some type of an appeals process?
We have, after the commissioner's letter said we can do an appeals beyond May 1st, so that's why we have that letter documenting a request to go beyond May 1st. So Jane and I have been working on a different relationship, so.
So with this new, because I think the letter said that there had to be a new plan put in place by the 2nd?
He's gonna, he sent the letter, and I don't want to speak on your behalf, Superintendent, but the letter states that if she wanted to request an extension, that she could, and she's going to do that.
And this afternoon, I'm gonna request that because we're going to adjust what it looks like. So Ms. Elsperman can give some more details to that,
Awesome.
so we get a little consensus that you hear what we're thinking.
Guess everybody had to leave. Yeah. Oh, well,
Thank you.
we still have a quorum. It's not me.
Hi. Hi, how are you? Good afternoon. How can I help?
I'd like you to talk about how next year's gonna look.
Well, one of the things that I have had an opportunity to do is to talk to both principals. And what we would like to do is to continue to move forward with those things that have really put us on this trajectory for tremendous success. And one of the things that I recognize is the yeoman's work that's been done by everyone at the school, the leadership at the schools, the teachers at the school, the students, and even in these last few weeks, the engagement of the families. And we want to recognize those things that have gotten us to this place. But we also want to take a look at what can we do that will provide the support and provide the direction that an external operator is supposed to provide, and maintain the leadership and the empowerment of the teachers and the staff. So we are in that conversation about what will that look like for this coming year, and how can we best serve the communities at both Evergreen and Oakcrest, recognizing that we have really unique situations at both campuses, and what are those things that we want to do to continue. So this is part of the conversation that we have. Actually, every week I have a meeting with the leadership team at Oakcrest and the meeting at the leadership team at Evergreen, and we're discussing that whole meeting is set aside just to talk about what does 2021 look like. So we have been continuing this conversation, knowing that we were waiting for a decision from the Department of Education, but given the decision of the Department of Education, we're planning to move forward, and we're coming up with what's going to be best for each school site in protecting what has already been done, and also moving forward and accelerating, because we have great opportunities to really accelerate student achievement by maintaining those things that have really promoted the school culture at both schools, and those things that we have put in place to really make sure that everyone feels proud to be part of those school communities.
Ms. Elsman, do you envision a pulling back of the external operator and transitioning more to the school leadership?
Well, the decision by the Department of Education has basically said that there is a need for an external operator, and so we do have to keep the external operator
there
in place. And so I think that what it looks like will be very different.
starting at the beginning of last year, there were a lot of things that needed to be installed that were challenging, that were standing in opposition to some things that had been done in the past. And so I think that all of those decisions that were made, those things that were put in place, they're all behind us. So I think that the initial, I think you might want to say the shock to the system that the external operator provided at the beginning of the year, that as the year has gone on, we've been able to really kind of rework some of that. So what we'd like to do is come up with something that will work well at Oakcrest, something that will work well at Evergreen, while maintaining the fidelity of having an external operator, because that's what the state is requiring.
Oh, yeah, coming in on a much different playing field. You know, last year it was just a couple of weeks before school started, before we knew who was going to be there, and then the shifts of teachers and all of that. So that's a great thing to have in your rearview mirror.
It is, and I think that that's one of the things that I hope that you understand. We're building on a really strong foundation. Both schools had a foundation that we came in on, but some of that was shaken because there were things that we put in place that were very different, from the master schedule to restorative practices to the instruction to the curriculum. We had a very focused, all of our curriculum expectations were about using evidence and research-based materials at all times. Well, that we had to identify what are they and what does that look like. So a lot of the things that we put in place right at the beginning, which were questions that may not have been asked in the past, all of those questions have been answered. We know what that looks like moving forward, and we've got good, strong leaders at both schools. That are really the best fit for those school communities. And so I'm really excited about the opportunity to continue working with some great, amazing teachers that have shown dedication, resilience, and creativity, especially in the last few weeks. And I'm looking forward to being able to support the progress that's been made.
Thank you, Mrs. Salzberg.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Thora, you still?
And just wondering about you had mentioned about an appeals process, and I know that the deadline can be extended for submitting the contract for external operator. I think I heard you speak to that a couple minutes ago. So.
Yeah, so we're going to start working with Jane too about what the new contract looks like, and that's what I was saying. You started the original one. If you would like to be a part of that, you certainly can. As we say, so you asked the question, is it going to be a lot less? So one school is going to be more admin heavy than the other, so it's going to be different for different schools, but I would ask you to be a part of that team again, so as we negotiate the contract again. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
That's it, Ms. Thora?
That's it.
Okay. Listen, thank you guys for this morning. I want again to commend Mr. McAteer and his group of people for the awesome job with pulling together plans for graduation that really takes some anxiety away from the parents and the community as a whole. And we want to celebrate our graduates. We want to let them know that we appreciate them and they're enduring this pandemic, and we're going to celebrate them and let them know that their accomplishment is worthy to be noted, and it's going to be good. I did have some questions about how, because I've gotten it from the community about how parents were going to pick up stuff, so I'm looking forward to that from Dr. Mayer. But then I also had questions about like yearbooks. Like kids have ordered yearbooks and stuff at schools, and those don't normally come in towards the end of the year. How they're going to get that, and then reimbursements for schools. That reimbursement, I know that Howard has already started because I got one of mine. But I know that there's parents that are asking that question, whether they're gonna do, grad bashes and all those type of things, where they've already paid for stuff, so we're looking for that plan as well. I do, some have already started. I don't know how many, but I got the question.
So we'll put a little nudge on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you just put something on, Kevin put something on the site, people can say they know that they are working on it. Because I imagine it's a monumental task, to be honest with you, across the district, so I think that could help. And then we know that things are changing. We keep saying things are changing daily. We don't know how things are going to work out with certain areas, but I do want to personally thank all of our staff who have voluntarily worked. That sounds different, doesn't it? They voluntarily worked through this pandemic. We appreciate you guys, our bus drivers, our food service people, our district staff, and all those that around the district who have voluntarily worked. And I'm not talking about work from home. They came in and put themselves in harm's way. For that, we thank them. And let me say this: at some point, we're gonna need some people to come back. We're gonna need you to voluntarily come in and work. Again, I say voluntarily because we're gonna have to get these kids stuff out of the classrooms. We're gonna have to do some different things, and we're gonna have to set up for graduation. So we're gonna need people that's gonna come in. Yeah, we're gonna need people to come in, and I know you're at home, but let's face it, you can't organize a stadium from the house. You're gonna have to come in and do it. We're not making anybody do anything, but we're saying that we're gonna need those people who are willing to volunteer and come out. And me personally, I know that I get a little stir crazy if I stay in the house too long. So come on and get a little fresh air and come on out. I do want to say this to our Legacy family, Principal Murphy and the whole Legacy family. They lost one of their members. Their IPC passed on last week. We're going to be praying for them, praying for their family as a whole, even through this time. We know that everything's going to work out for their family, but we're definitely going to be praying for them as well. And Principal Murphy, as they get through this tough time. It was difficult to be sick during a pandemic where you don't have family and stuff around you. So that makes it a little bit more difficult for their family. So again, we're going to be praying for them. And we're just looking forward to what we're going to be doing in the next few weeks and going forward. I love to hear these plans that's coming out. Just waiting to see how things are going to turn out for these kids. And and I'm always going to say it, please be safe. Please be safe. I do want to notate to Ms. McCall, I have challenged churches. I have challenged my Greek organizations. I have challenged Masonic organizations and individuals as well to collect food for next week.
Ms. Green did a great job. She organized. How many pounds did you have, Ms. Green?
Like 1,100 pounds.
Oh, wow. So you had 1,100. You had how many?
Over 3,000.
Over 3,000.
I'm collecting. I started yesterday or Monday, and yeah.
Okay, so
It'll be a lot of food.
I believe we'll go over the 12,000 pounds that we had a few weeks ago. But I talked to Dr. Jerome Gamble, and he wants to do a convoy of food or a caravan of food on Monday, the 27th. So I think we'll make those 12,000 pounds plus. We're going to make sure that these kids and the interfaith has what it needs. And so those are my friends. You guys, I'm going to be hitting you up, and I've already gotten stuff in my office stacked up to my wall. So we're just looking forward to
I do want to say thank you to Cheney Brothers, because they did step up, and Interfaith was able to purchase around $10,000 worth of bulk food.
Great.
And they've gotten a lot of cash donations, but they haven't been able to purchase the bulk food. So Cheney Brothers is stepping up to the plate, so thank you, Cheney Brothers.
That is awesome. And there will be also on next week, Saturday on the 2nd, there's going to be a grocery distribution at Friends Recycling. So we're just trying, everybody is going through the same thing, but everybody is going through it differently. So we don't know how they're going to go through it, but we want to make sure that people get the things that they need to make it through this time. So thank you, guys. There being no further thing, I got to look at the attorney, make sure we good. She went. So, okay. All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Well, we don't need a motion. It's a work session. All right. Work session is over at 12:52.